You're smart, you know.
Okay.
It's like, now you're being silly.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Sparta Township Planning Board. Thank you to those joining us here and online. For the record, this meeting is being held on June 3rd, 2026 at 7 p.m. in the Sparta Township Municipal Building located at 65 Main Street, Sparta, New Jersey. And the live stream can be viewed on YouTube at www.youtube.com/@SpartaTWP. Please note that adequate public notice of this meeting was given in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act. No new business is to be conducted after 9:30 p.m., and the meeting will end at 10. Let us begin with a salute to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Raisha, would you please call the roll?
Sure. Birgit Bogler.
Here.
Vice Chairwoman Jeanette Burt.
Here.
Ron Day.
Here.
Christine Dunbar.
Here.
Joan Furman.
Here.
Chairwoman Celeste Luciano.
Present.
Christine Quinn.
Here.
Ernie Ragsdale.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Mike Sylvester.
Here.
Michael Wallace.
Here.
Brian Zimmerman.
Here.
Okay, thank you. So this evening, we're going to change the order of tonight's agenda. I do have a matter that needs to be taken care of first with regard to minor site plan subcommittee. There was an application that had been brought to minor site plan subcommittee in February of this year. That was our first application, and that was for the economic development zone. The way our ordinance is currently written, most things that are, sorry, not most things, all things that are relative to the economic development zone, even if they are based on a minor site plan potential, whether it be a new tenant or a new sign, the way that the ordinance is written currently, they are supposed to go to the full board. We now have a new application for a second tenant in that same spot. So what we are intending to do here, members of the board, is provide permission based on the fact that the original application for that same site was heard without this additional information at that time. We're hoping to get permission from the full board to allow this applicant to move through the minor site plan process, given the understanding that their first application for their first tenant went the same way. So I would like very much for a motion and a second to allow application number, excuse me, this is 26-19 for minor site plan subcommittee, High Point Solutions Incorporated, for the property location of 2 Aaron Way, Sparta, New Jersey, block 16003, lot numbers 1 and 2 for the economic development zone to be allowed to be heard at the minor site plan level. May I have a motion in a second?
Could you
I'll make a
just explain this? Because
Yeah,
I'm not
it-
really
I'll
understanding.
Yeah,
let Ken.
Yeah, what happened here is you have, and in the audience, we do have the property owner and the broker. At 2 Aaron Way, there is a project that does not require a variance or a waiver, and therefore normally would qualify to go to minor site plan review. Unfortunately, your ordinance talks about the ED zone, that the ED zone has to come before the full board. So what the applicant is saying, here's the full board. Can it go to minor site plan for the review? Or they're here now if you want to hear their discussion, or have them on next week's or in 2 weeks on the agenda with their architect, but they have no variance or waiver requirement.
Okay, I'm just going to speak from little past history here because we've dealt with this issue last year. And, you know, you were involved in it, and we had originally read that if it is in the ED zone, you know, it was treated a certain way, and we were corrected on that. And the minor site plan at that time started hearing those applications, and I think you concurred with it. So I don't think I mean, we can do the vote. I don't think it needs it.
I think it just clarifies
we
for
could,
the,
but
for the record.
future-
Yeah, I am in support that applicants that are permitted uses in the zone, even if it's the ED zone, that do not require any variances or waiver, they can go to the minor site. That is my opinion. And the nice thing about everybody here in the dais It has come before the full board as the ordinance discusses, and I'm recommending to you vote to have it referred to minor site plan. Therefore, you've complied with the administrative requirement.
Right. I think the only thing was if it had anything to do with hazardous materials, that was a no-no. Or if the minor site plan subcommittee, and I think this is something we need to talk about later, if they're uncomfortable with anything with the process, that they don't have professionals, they have the right to refer it to the full board. But if they're comfortable with it, then
Joan, that's well said. What I'd recommend, the applicant is here, and the broker, maybe if the property owner could stand up for a moment. Sir, do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, whole truth?
If you
and-
wouldn't mind
Oh,
approaching the
sorry.
microphone.
I'm sorry. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, or the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
State your name and business address for the record.
Patrick Turzi, Turzi. Business address is 105 West Dewey Avenue, Building B, Suite 220, Wharton, New Jersey, 07885.
And are you the owner or principal related to 2 Aaron Way?
Yes.
And just if you could tell the board what you're seeking and why you're here.
So we constructed a new building on Aaron Way. It's a 44,000 square foot building. We were here in February, as gentleman said, to have approval for our first tenant, which occupies or is going to occupy about half of the building. And today we're here for a tenant to occupy almost the entire second half of the building.
And there's no new variances and no new waivers on the property that you're aware of?
There's no new variances or waivers, and this use is actually even less intense than the use that was previously presented in February because there's no offices being built. It's just a storage tenant.
And you heard Ms. Furman, there's not going to be any hazardous waste or regulated chemicals in the building?
Not to my knowledge, and our lease does prohibit hazardous waste or hazardous materials within the building. The tenant has a representative here that can address those questions further.
Maybe we can just get the tenant up real quick.
Sure.
Rep,
Absolutely.
do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Name and business address for the record.
I'm Sandra Curran. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of High Point Solutions at 5 Gale Court, Sparta, New Jersey, 07871.
And what is High Point Solutions? What do you do?
We sell IT equipment on 5 Gale Court. We've been there about 30 years, and we need additional storage for our inventory. So we wanted to stay in Sparta right down the street.
And you recognize that if the signage that's required is different from what was approved, you may have to come back before the board for signage application.
We shouldn't need any signage. It's just storage.
You don't need signage.
We do not.
All right, I have no further questions of, look, board, the purpose of these applications are, when there are no variances or no waivers, that they can just be approved by the board. In my opinion, based upon the sworn testimony, and there were prior approvals in place, I believe you could, on the record, approve this tenancy rather than refer it to the minor site plan subcommittee, or you can refer it to the minor site plan committee. So whatever this board determines, if you want to approve it tonight, the tenancy, or refer it to minor site plan.
I would only ask that they take a look at the hazardous chemicals list and sign something that you won't have any of that in storage.
Is that acceptable? Tenant and landlord's acceptable? Okay. If someone move, go ahead.
One thing, if I could, I'm going back to the ordinance where that was put in. And one of the concerns, one of the reasons we had it come back to the full board was just to make sure from a traffic perspective that the intensity, because nope, they didn't know who the tenant was at the time. So we said, we'd like to be able to take a look at the traffic intensity, how many trips are coming in and coming out. And so there was something that was already approved as part of the main, as part of the initial application. So be good to get something that says this, we expect so many trips coming in and coming out a day.
Yeah, you heard Mr. Day. Go ahead.
Yes, I heard the question. So again, this is extra storage, so I wouldn't expect more than maybe 2 to 3 trucks a week coming in and out. So it's light usage. It's our extra, we kind of call it cold storage, things that aren't used that much, but we need to store. And we're out of space in our current facility.
That would be part of the application, and part of the approval will be, somewhere, 2 to 3 trips. What did you say?
Yeah, it would be a delivery of equipment or picking equipment up a few times a week. It's not going to be heavy.
Because again, they're taking part of the warehouse.
Correct.
I'm satisfied that we have sworn testimony now. I'm satisfied that if this board wanted to approve it with those conditions, we could do that.
Okay, thank you.
So I'll make a motion, if no one has any other comments, to approve it with the conditions that were mentioned here. So as long as there's something in writing that says, sorry. As long as there's something in writing that addresses what Joan brought up as far as hazardous chemicals, and as long as something is in there that what Mr. Day brought up, which is, how many trips you're gonna have, I'm comfortable making the motion to approve it with those considerations.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Do we have a roll call, please?
Birgit Bogler,
Yes.
Vice Chairwoman Jeanette Burt, Ron Day,
Yes.
Christine Dunbar,
Yes.
Joan Furman,
Yes.
Chairwoman Celeste Luciano,
Yes.
Christine Quinn,
Yes.
Ernie Ragstat, Deputy Mayor Mike Sylvester, Mike Wallace, Brian Zimmerman.
Yes.
All right, one question before you leave. On the trips, don't want to get you tripped up on it. A week, once a day, twice a day?
I mean, I can't imagine it's more than a couple times a day, most that we would ever have. And you're talking about FedEx trucks, that kind of truck coming in.
Ron, what would you feel comfortable on the trips for the resolution?
I'll leave that to the minor site plan, only because, I don't know the size of the building. I don't know how many employees are going to be there, and so.
Any recommendation on the language for the number of trips during the week?
Maybe just as part of their application for, they just have something written saying the number of employees, hours of operations, and it's just saying it's gonna be standard deliveries, Amazon, FedEx, that they're not getting, wholesale deliveries to their, I think that would be, because, FedEx, right, we can hope that they come a couple of times a week, but you know, how many times do you get an email like your package is delayed? So I think maybe just saying kind of the standard delivery from FedEx, UPS, Amazon, and nothing beyond those like wholesale large box trucks kind of coming in. And
Your delivery comes.
sometimes Amazon comes 5 times a day. Sometimes it does not come.
That could be my house.
Just real quick thing.
I have a quick
The
question.
number of employees you have,
There are going to be 3 or 4 employees at the facility, and it's 8 to 4, 8 to 4, 8 to 5.
Saturday, Sunday?
No.
Okay.
And just to clarify, when we're talking about a trip or a truck, are we talking about an 18-wheeler? Are we talking about a box truck? Are we talking about a van?
I was just going to say that the building has, 11 loading docks, so I just want to be clear, I don't want to mislead the board, that they will be getting, if they don't, the other tenants in the building are getting tractor trailers in the building, that's what it was designed.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Less intensive.
So I'll leave it at standard deliveries and this tenant not anticipating wholesale deliveries.
Correct.
Is that good?
That is correct.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm fine.
You good?
I think we're good, gang.
Okay.
That may have been the fastest roll call I've ever experienced.
Thank you very much.
Well, and thank you for staying in Sparta and
Thank you.
keeping your business in Sparta. We
Yes,
appreciate that.
Thank you. Okay. In
night.
keeping with taking our agenda out of order, we are going to move to the public hearings section. So we have on our agenda Sparta Apartments Real Estate Fund LLC, who is the successor in interest to Fluss Holdings, which was application number 24-708, for the extension of their prior approval. That has been carried to our June 17th, 2026 meeting. that brings us to,
And if I could, just real quick on that, the attorney called me. This is, if you recall, there's new construction of apartments. It has a long history. They have their approvals and finance in place. I did say to the attorney if he could show up. He said there's no amendments per se to the plan itself, but I think some of the board members had questions on where the application is and the status and when they anticipate building. So he is prepared at the next meeting to just talk about the history and where the application is. Thank you.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
sure.
I wasn't on the board when this was approved. I was on the board when it was Captiva, and then it was something else, and then it was
Yes.
Fluss,
Yes.
and now it's Sparta Apartment Real Estate. So my question is, has anything in the design or anything that was approved by this board been changed? Or are they moving forward with exactly what was already approved?
My understanding is exactly what was approved, and
but
that's
not
the-
what was approved as Captiva.
No, no, no.
Correct.
What was
Approved as
the
Fluss.
most current
Yes.
owner, so they bought it as is and are going to adhere to the plans that were approved?
correct.
Okay.
So and I want to make it clear that we are not reopening the approval.
Correct.
No, this is an
When they
extension
come
of time.
come to the board, they're giving us just an update and wanting our blessing to acknowledge that the transfer is taking place, correct?
Right, because under the Municipal Land Use Act, New Jersey, you have so long to get a building permit, so they need a slight extension. And in order to get that extension, they're telling you why. But my understanding is there is no change. It's still a permitted use, and that's why they're coming next month, next
Okay.
meeting. Thank you. Nothing further on that.
So, moving to master plan consistency review for the ordinance amending chapter, excuse me,
We're going to do minutes?
I'm sorry?
We're doing minutes?
We're going to do that at the end. We're rearranging the order. Entitled Comprehensive Land Management Code of the Township of Sparta Code to amend Section 18-421 entitled C1H Community Commercial Historic Zone. Before I open the floor to Lindsay for her comprehensive review, we need to address a few issues with regard to process and procedure and how certain things have unfolded within the confines of the last few months between the introduction of this ordinance to date. Originally, and just to clear up some miscommunication, originally, this board was intending to hear this consistency review at our May 20th meeting. That did not happen because there was an issue at the council level relative to their notice for their hearing, and we were asked to remove it from our agenda. There being nothing remaining on our agenda for that day, we canceled that meeting. There was a question at the council level to determine whether or not they were going to move forward with either consistency review or a reexamination report of the entirety of the TCC zone in order to contemplate whether or not that would capture the issues they were having with the fair share zone, with the fair share property that's also within the confines of Lake Mohawk, as well as the C1H ordinance. They decided to move forward with the consistency review because it was more cost-effective and it was a faster process. So just to clarify that information. I'm also going to open it up to the board because I know the board had a few questions in terms of process and procedure, how things should normally flow. And this way, Ken can help facilitate that process and give everybody a better understanding of what should have happened and kind of dispel some of the confusion. So I'm going to start, Birgit, if you wouldn't mind, if you have any questions. You can reserve the right for it to come back around.
I would,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so Ron, do you have any questions?
I do. I guess, first of all, we typically have someone here to explain the ordinance and what it does. So I guess we're not going to have anyone here tonight to do that.
Lindsay is here for her consistency review. That is,
Okay.
that is the entirety of the scenario.
Okay.
But to your point, typically the author, I
Yes.
know when I write an ordinance, right, I present it to the governing body. I bring it to the planning board, and then I'm tasked with showing how it is consistent with the master plan, so it's most likely how that's been handled previously, but I've read the ordinance, I've read Ms. Sarmad's notes as well, and I'm prepared to discuss it, going over the ordinance as well as the master plan and reexamination reports.
So I think one thing that would be helpful, if you could, Lindsay, is
Sure.
just again, explain to people, when we look at it for consistency, what is it we're looking for?
Absolutely, yeah. So I kind of will go directly to the MLUL for this and just
Okay.
directly cite that, since that is, the governing document for the board. And just directly from NJSA 4055D26, the planning board serves as an advisory role in the municipal legislative process by reviewing proposed zoning ordinances and amendments for consistency with the master plan. Upon referral from the governing body, the board is charged with determining whether a proposed ordinance advances the goals and objectives established in the master plan and reports its findings accordingly. So you're tasked with reviewing the ordinance that was presented to us, as well as reviewing the master plan and the subsequent reexamination reports, and determining if the ordinance this evening is wholly consistent. Is it consistent? However, maybe there are some pieces in it that are not, and we have suggestions to the governing body, which they are open to take or not take. And then finally, if you find it just wholly inconsistent as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, not a problem.
Any other questions, Rob?
No.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to Ernie. Do you have any questions?
No.
No? Jeanette? Chris, do you have any questions?
Me?
Yes, you.
That's a silly question. Now you're being silly.
I know.
So yes, I do. And these are process questions and about like how we got here, but also around different things that affect this, just for clarification.
And Lindsay, if you can't answer it, kick it to Ken if it's illegal.
Got it.
So first and foremost, when we're looking at the actual ordinances and the process of changing the zones and things of that nature, this zone exists right now on Route 94.
Yes.
And there are actually, it's not one piece of property, it's 9 parcels of property that have been in this zone from the beginning. So the first question I have is, have the property owners of those 9 parcels been notified?
Based on noticing requirements, I would assume so.
I need clarification on that.
I
Not
did
from
not-
you,
yeah,
I
did
know,
not do
but
the noticing,
Raisha,
so-
or I don't know who can confirm this, but
That would be Carrie.
Ken? Ken?
Yeah, I would say it's sent to us. It's presumed that the law was complied with. So it is our duty to review it. I am assuming that the law was complied with, but if it wasn't, then it's defective.
Can we please not assume? Can we
Right, and if
please,
you're-
can
if you're
someone
But
please
it's not,
confirm?
it's not, it's not our, it's really not our task.
Oh, okay.
She said Carrie.
Oh, Carrie, I thought,
said
I'm sorry,
Carrie.
I thought you said Ken.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
sorry.
I
Okay,
realized that you heard Ken.
I heard
I
Ken.
was trying to say Carrie. She
Oh,
said
sorry. Okay, so that's the first part of this. The second part of it is basically a duplication, because the other are all of the parcels that are in the proposed expansion, all of the properties that were identified in the ordinance itself. And each one of those properties is currently in a different zone and will be moved into, if approved, a new zone. So my question again is, have these property owners received notice from a process perspective? Because, and I'm asking this because, at least from my perception, we've kind of, the process has sort of been a little bit fluid on this one, and I just want to make sure that through the fluidity, we are sticking to what the law demands, which in my understanding is that every property owner that's affected needs to be noticed that their zone is going to be changed.
My understanding is there was a problem in the past, and that has been cured. Again, if it was done improperly, it's statutorily defective, but your task is to refer to you and to review it. And I will put in the documentation that we assume and recognize that if it was not done properly, that it would be procedurally defective. But again, we're tasked to review.
No. These are not even my questions on the review. These are my process questions.
I got you.
And
I
then
got you.
to further that, the additional lots that you speak of in the ordinance, they're not repealing those lots from the area. There's no repeal or replace of those lots. So we're assuming that they are also included in this ordinance amendment.
So
They would have to be
all of those properties are currently in TCC.
The other C1H zone,
Oh, the one on 94.
yes.
Okay, so when I'm talking about the second question was the properties that are affected on block 5024. So that's in the Lake Mohawk district. So that's what I'm asking. I'm asking, have the people on 94 been notified? And then second question, are we sure that the people in Lake Mohawk have been notified? Because all of those property owners, their property, if this goes through, their property, the zone will also change. So I'm just again, this has been a little bit, a little fluid.
Confusing.
So I just want to make sure that statutorily, these steps have not been missed along the way.
Yeah, I think assuming that they got to this, it's now at this board after fixing the mistake that occurred in the first time with noticing, I would assume that the second noticing has been done correctly.
Okay. And at the time when this was introduced, once it's introduced, what is the percentage of changes that drives it to have to be reintroduced? So in other words, changes, when you introduce an ordinance, if you make changes to it, and they are what's considered to be,
Material change.
if
Material
they're
substantive.
sensitive changes, then the ordinance cannot just be checked off and changed a little bit and introduced. It has to be reintroduced and start from the beginning. So are we of the opinion that that holds here, or are we happy that what we have is ready? I mean, again, from a process
From a
perspective,
process, I have no indication that there has been substantial or material change. But you are correct. If there were, then you'd have to start over.
What would constitute a material change in this instance?
That's a good question.
Percentage, isn't it?
Well, in this case, I mean, at least when we were going through the affordable housing stuff, I know the material changes, and that was erring on a side of abundance of caution, just because those are a lot of those are going through the legal process. We went anything beyond a typographical error or a grammatical error would be considered a substantial change that would initiate a reintroduction.
So can I, so in the May 20 version, in the section 3, block 5024, listed lots 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And then in the June 3rd version, under section 3, block 5024, it only lists lots 1 through 9. 10 has been removed. Is that a material change?
I'm okay with it because it's less intensive. It's not more intensive. So to me, again, think of your own experience with your own property. If you're adding somebody, that is a material change. If you're taking someone out, I'm not as moved by that.
Yes, and also given that they redid notice for the lots included, I would assume that that would be a change that would be permitted to continue on the process.
So the fact that the lot that was removed, being Lot 10, is 5 West Shore Trail, and 5 West Shore Trail had been included in Sparta's Fair Share Housing Plan and is also part of the $528 million fraud scheme that Sparta residents Joseph Pasalacqua and Raymond Perello Jr. pleaded guilty to. That's not a material difference, because if it was on February 24th, if Sparta Council knew that 5 West Shore Trail was going into the affordable housing plan, then why would it have been included in the first place?
Well, my understanding is Lot 10, since it's part of the town's fair housing plan, That's why it was pulled out. The issues of the title owner and those issues are such that, to be candid with, they're not land use issues. They are, as far as this zone and this lot, as part of your fair housing plan, how many unit dwelling go there? I mean, that's, Lindsay, you have anything you can add to that?
No, and the reason why it also might have been, this is just knowing the process of affordable housing. I am not your affordable housing planner, so I can't speak on behalf of what has gone through their mediation process. But it's likely that fair share or through that process, maybe they were asked to remove it or to be zoned a certain way to reach kind of plan conformance as part of kind of their settlement process. So it's possible that they suggested a type of zoning, a type of bulk or something like that, why that might have, since it is an affordable, it is designated for affordable purposes, it might have a little hypersensitivity to the zoning, and the choice to remove it might have been associated with that.
Just a question following it. So my understanding is whether it's affordable housing or not, if it's in the zone, it still has to meet the requirements of the zone. So by not including it in the amendment, doesn't it relieve it of that responsibility?
Yeah, I did get the opportunity, and I compliment Mayor Quinn on providing me the ordinance. The ordinance is not an overlay, it's a specific ordinance for that particular parcel. So you have, under your fair housing, direct zoning, and as Lindsay said, it may have been part of the settlement agreement because they have to put restrictive deeds on the property. So I am guessing, but from a land use perspective, it was referred to you by way of the ordinance. 10 is taken out. I don't think there's anything illegal that 10 was taken out, especially in light of the ordinance that has it part of your fair housing plan. And I respect the other issues that are related to the title owner, but it is not before you, and I don't think there's anything improper for you to look at the ordinance because Lot 10 was not in it. is
Yeah,
my-
and
Again, I
truthfully.
don't think I really got an answer to my question there. So if it's in the zone, doesn't it have to meet the standards of that zone, whether it be architectural or block standards?
It's not in there, it's gonna be in its own separate zone for affordable housing purposes as part of your settlement agreement to maintain the township's immunity for the fourth round.
And Ron, if in that ordinance it said, and they shall comply with the design standards of the historic district, I don't know if it does or doesn't. I haven't looked at
So
that.
that ordinance was pulled, and it was introduced, and then it was pulled. But to Ron's point, and to the point of this, if you take one chunk of property and it's in a different zone, like a spot zone, which, just gonna leave that out there. And if that is not consistent, then you can have a complete imbalance in what's going on in a very small space, because where we're looking at the density, and that led into sort of my next question to you, but I don't want to move on because it's very important. I think that, I don't know if we tell you or how this happens, but when that is reintroduced, if that is going to be what that is, then there should be something tying it to the design standards of what the rest of it is going to look like, so you don't end up with something that sticks out like a sore thumb in the middle of White Deer Plaza and whatever else is developed there. So it should not be allowed to be its own thing. And Ron, that's a great catch.
So just to, you can absolutely put design standards when that comes forward. However, I would look at the zoning of that site differently. It's mentioned in your housing element and fair share plan, which is a part of your master plan. So for consistency purposes, if that lot is in your housing element and fair share plan and identified as one of your mechanisms for your fourth round compliance, which leads to your immunity from builder's remedy suits, I would be hypersensitive to that particular block and lot, just because deviations from your settlement agreement could potentially put you at risk from losing your immunity. However, when that is introduced, I would say you could put design requirements due to and if you've read my memo, right, that's something I probably weighed pretty heavily on. I think, and that's something as we've drafted this master plan, is something that we've heard from the public, we've heard from the boards that design standards are very important. So I think when that ordinance is introduced, either having it refer back to the historic preservation or having its own design standards is something that absolutely we as a board, when it comes to the planning board for master plan consistency, is something we can consider and recommend to the governing body.
But to Beer Gates' point, why couldn't it be in the zone and then there'd just be an overlay for affordable housing over it?
Because as part of your settlement. it
Oh, the
was
settlement?
agreed- Yeah, it's
Okay.
probably part of your settlement that they didn't. So historically, this is just affordable housing. Historically, in rounds 1, 2, 3, overlays were generally frowned upon. So in this fourth round, when overlays were kind of being pushed a little more, a lot of the planners who have been, ingrained in affordable housing were quite surprised. But traditionally, affordable housing has been zoning amendments, not necessarily overlays.
Okay.
And I'm sure that that is part of your settlement. It was part of that process. I can't speak directly to it, but I would assume that that's why it's becoming its own zone. And it's probably a general zone where all of the affordable projects that are used as mechanisms will be for your fourth round.
So to make sure I understand right, and I appreciate the explanation.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, it was long-winded.
So, no, it's
complicated.
okay. It sounds like anything that's going to be included in the affordable housing settlements, any of those buildings do not need to meet the standards of the zones that they're in. They're going to have their own standard?
They will, at least this one. I don't know. I haven't seen the rest because your settlement is still an ongoing process. But the ordinance will be drafted for these specific lots to have their own bulk requirements, most likely, or they will refer to another zone, like how we have in some zones, like the C1H, which refers to the C1. So in a similar fashion, the new zones, I haven't seen what has been written. I believe it, like I said, it's still ongoing, but they will either have their own, because it will be a zone in itself, and they will have their bulk requirements specifically for that zone.
If I may, just so I could stay, I'm trying to follow the conversation. Can we be exact on the property we're talking about? So we're not mixing up certain parcels down there. The one that was removed, the one that's started the conversation, what's the lot block of that parcel?
Yeah, it's block 5024, lot 10. If you look on the map as well that I provided for you guys, I know it's hard to see the red lines on this, but it's the one that doesn't have red lines around it, but it's West Shore Trail it fronts on is the narrowest side. And then when you see 5025 for that block, right to the left of it.
So it's the auto body shop.
The former
Former
auto
auto
body
body
shop.
shop. So I only have two more questions.
It's a narrow, long property.
Before we leave this question, though, along what you're saying, if this property is totally pulled out, and it's not going to be in the list that goes in with the rest of Lake Mohawk, are they still subject to the Lake Mohawk bylaws and part of that community, or is that all pulled out?
All right, in my professional opinion, title is title. If the property is located, I think goes to what Ron Day was trying to get out, that the title issues remain. The municipality, under your power, can have the power of zoning, and they can say zoning-wise here, but your Lake Mohawk title regulations, in my opinion, remain on the property, runs with the property. That's the term of art. Because it's deeded, correct. Now, as far as what Lindsay was alluding to, if the fair housing settlement says X is more than number of dwellings, I think it's fair, again, going to Ron's discussion, and everyone here, I think, is saying that the design standard should remain, though, for that historic preservation. And I think that's a fair comment to be made to the mayor and council and to be put as part of your review tonight, whatever you determine. I think that's fair.
Lindsay, another question. When you were doing sorry, I never am told I can't be heard, so I'm sorry about that. When you were doing your review, because this area was pulled out, because this property was pulled out, I know that there was discussion about the number of units that were going to be on this property, which is, a pretty you mentioned intensity several times in your review of this. So my question is, because that property was pulled out, did you take the additional intensity of that, the build-out of that property into effect when you created your report? Or did you not look at that and not look at that and include it in density or intensity when you were doing your review?
So to be completely transparent, knowing that it's an affordable designation is going to go there, I did not include that in the thought process for this memo because of the unique situation of affordable housing and truly the sensitivity of anything putting the township at risk of not being able to achieve that immunity. I thought that was kind of the most important piece. So with that in kind of the forefront of my mind, I chose to just ignore that property and, and just look at the additional properties that are included in the C1, that are proposed to be included in the C1H zone.
So, and the reason why I asked that was not to put you on the spot or anything of the sort, but was just to say that when it comes to intensity, we also need to be aware that this is going to be a reality. So it needs to be at least understood that this is going to add intensity and density to this space as well. So that's why I wanted to just clarify that.
Absolutely understood.
And just one more question.
Chris, I just want to add
Yep.
to that,
Yes.
to your point, so as we continue the process for the master plan and the land use element, and when we do the review of this section, all of that is going to be taken into consideration. So everything that's being done here is going to get reevaluated in the master plan process. So I just want to put that out there.
Okay. And just, again, another general question. We're dealing with sort of a hybrid here, I think, because of the designation of the reservation. So it's a private community, it's a private reservation, it's got this retail component to it. It has its own HOA, it has its own bylaws, it has its own things. And then on top of that, we're kind of now looking, which is what we're going to be doing next, at this consistency review to understand it. And my question is, the understanding of the township, any kind of ordinance that is put forth by any of our land use boards and approved by the council, the town is in charge of that. The town has the teeth, the town enforces it, the town does all of that. And what I want to confirm is that in no way, shape, or form, and how do we balance the fact that some of the uses that we're going to be talking about fly in the face of some of the bylaws that exist and that determination. And if that was taken into consideration, I know we'll talk about it when we get into the actual document itself, but I just wanted to ask, how that's handled, because I know we have a little bit of a sticky situation here, and it's a little different because of the determination and the type of reservation that it is.
Yeah, so my task this evening is based on the municipal land use law, and the municipal land use law is the guiding document for, planning laws in the state of New Jersey. And unfortunately, in this case, it only speaks on behalf of looking at consistency with the master plan, the master plan reexamination reports. So anything associated outside of those documents would not be reviewed for consistency.
Okay.
So Ken,
Thanks.
is it fair to say that because title goes to the properties that are owned by the reservation, that bylaws would be linked to title as opposed to zone?
I believe that the title issues run with the property and remain there. So if there is a conflict between the title and the ordinance, that is not before us, and I'm not giving an opinion on it. But again, you are here for consistency. If you have concern that they are inconsistent, I think you should bring that as part of your review.
All right, so we are going to, Chris, if that was your last question?
No, I promise. That was my last one.
Okay,
for
so we're
that.
going to move on to Mike.
I'm good.
Okay,
I'll wait, thank you.
Okay.
I'm okay.
Joan? Come on, don't disappoint.
We're just doing process now.
Yes, this is just process, yes.
Joan, you might want to just pull down your microphone. There you go.
Okay. So as far as process go, Celeste, you had said in your opening remarks that the town had asked for a reexamination report.
I had mentioned that, yes, the town was trying to determine whether or not they were going to move in the direction of a reexamination report or continue with the process of the super notice and the consistency review.
I just have a real issue there because asking for a reexamination report to support something is well beyond their purview. The master plan and the reassessments, especially when we're in the middle of a master plan right now, is totally unwarranted. So we can talk about that later. I'm just bringing it up, and under other business, I think there are a lot of things we really have to talk about as far as overreach. Legal question for Ken. Because of the way that this was mucked up, the 35 days ends today. We tried to get it in writing that when they said that the notice was incorrect and they were going to do a new notice, I know I had asked you and you had asked them, can you retract it and give us a new one? Instead, at the very last minute, we got something last Friday that said, April 29th, you have 35 days. That is up today, and we're not done with all of this. The mayor wrote back and he said, well, you know, we're a community, we'll definitely take a look at it, but legally, we don't have to do anything. So if we're sitting here doing all this, what is our recourse, Ken, and how are we going to ensure that they listen to what we say, our recommendations, they follow the statute that says they can vote to disregard our findings, but they have to put it on the record and they have to take a vote because they fell short last time in doing that. And I don't want that to happen again. I want to know where we stand legally as a planning board.
Thanks, Joan. I think if we look to the Neglia report, the revised report of June 2nd on page 1, talks about the New Jersey statute 40:55D-26 that Lindsay had written before, and it clearly says the planning board serves as an advisory role. So basically, we are advisory, and the time period here, the 35 days, is really meant to give our advice. It's not meant to hold up the ordinance, so if you did not act, the mayor and council could say that they had done their statutory duty. In my opinion, we are here tonight. We have a light agenda by way of, this is the most important thing. I think we complied with the review tonight within the 35 days, and we give them our comments. It'll be on the record, so I think you're in very good shape. If you decide not to take action tonight on this, I think you are subjecting yourselves to the mayor and council saying that you had your opportunity. So I hope does that help in what you're looking for?
No, if we do, I'm assuming we're going to have to do something tonight, so we do it. But I don't want them tomorrow or, you know, when this comes back to say they're kind of disregarding some of the things we say because they don't have to follow it by statute because it was beyond 35 days. But they were the ones who caused us not to be able to do that.
Well, they'll have actual notice. This is a public meeting. We have a council representative here, and I am satisfied that your decision tonight satisfies the 35 days, so I'm not worried about that.
Okay, so if we have something, and the statute says that when considering the adoption or development, regulation, or revision of an amendment thereto, they shall review the report of the planning board, may disapprove or change any recommendation by a vote of the majority, if it's full authorized membership, and shall record in its minutes the reasons for not following such recommendation. And that's what we expect them to do.
That's the statute, and you're also reading, Lindsay has that in her report.
Yes, that's what I'm
verbatim.
reading
Yes,
from.
yes.
Okay, and if not, we're prepared to challenge that.
Well, that's beyond my pay grade, but I am just the attorney. If this board decides to take action. That is, remember that you are the planning board. We have no power of subpoena. We have no budget. We have no ability to, we have our municipal land use power. So that is our road. That's our rail. That's where we are.
Well, let's hope it goes okay. So that was number one. All right, I'll save the rest for when we come back to.
Okay, well, to piggyback off of what Joan was discussing, my sole comment is predicated on this memo dated April 29, 2026, and the 35-day window. We are acting in good faith. We are assuming that the council will also act in good faith. We understand that there are legal ramifications that fall within the confines of the 35-day window. However, we do have confirmation from the mayor that regardless of any legal determination, they will act in good faith. So I am going to assume that the members of the council who are capable of voting on this will adhere to that and will take what's happening here tonight into consideration, and we'll move forward at their hearing on the 9th with our report and our advice in hand. That having been said, I am going to pass the microphone to our board planner, Lindsay Knight. If you,
Can I ask one more question? I
sure.
apologize. So I just want to make sure that I'm clear what we're doing here tonight. So this is a consistency review. It's not a review, do we like it, do we not like it? It's a review is it consistent with the existing master plan? And we can make recommendations further than that, but that's the decision we're making tonight. Is that correct?
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Everything that we just discussed was relative to process and procedure.
Okay, thank you.
Are we getting into the meat and potatoes of the ordinance now or after?
Right now, Lindsay is going to give us her information and explain what's going on with the ordinance and so on, and then we can ask additional questions relative to the consistency review.
And just real quick, again, in Lindsay's first page, the paragraph on MLUL responsibilities, the board is charged with determining whether a proposed ordinance advances the goals and objectives established in the master plan and reporting its findings accordingly. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lindsay.
Yeah, thank you guys. So I'll just jump right into it and starting with the 2020 Master Plan Reexamination Report, which actually was prepared by Catherine Sarmad, your township planner. This plan really refers heavily back to your 2018 master plan. It was 2 year of reexamination report. It was kind of 2 years. So a lot of it was just referring back to it, and not much had changed in those 2 years. So many of the goals and objectives remained relevant. Specifically, the planning board raised concerns with residential densities in the environs and around the lake communities, specifically relating to water quality. So this is important to note because although bed and breakfasts are not technically a residential use, it is a gray area because it does have very many similarities to residences. However, typically the person residing on the property, it is one unit that is used for the agent or the person who owns the property, and it's typically looked at as an accessory use. But because they are acting as a commercial use, there's commercial transactions, they require business licenses and tax registrations and health inspections. It kind of is this hybrid type use. So depending on how the planning board would classify this use would kind of determine if this conditional use would be permitted as consistent with the problems identified in the 2020 master plan. If this was categorized the board as commercial, the environmental concerns should still be handled with extreme sensitivity, though, due to the C1H's zone proximity to Lake Mohawk, and kind of also looking forward to the comprehensive master plan we are currently working on. I've been privy to many of the conversations, to a lot of the public input, and the environment is a huge concern for residents. So I think when something like this is going to be proposed, or when it does eventually come to, if it does look, we do determine this is a consistent use, and it does come to a planning board, I think looking at the environmental conditions is extremely important. The next piece is from the prior recommendations that remain valid and should continue to be implemented. Residential densities and smart growth techniques such as transfer of development rights or credits should be examined to meet the challenges of managing growth while retaining open space and protecting environmentally sensitive land and water resources. Smart growth is developing in areas that already have utilities and infrastructure in place, so it's trying to avoid sprawl. In this case, making the C1H zone an identified area as kind of a traditional downtown certainly makes sense for that area. You have White Deer Plaza already. You have those other types of complementary historic in nature architecture as well as uses. And I think that by removing some of the uses that were previously in there, hotels, motels, certainly is consistent with creating smart growth as well as creating that traditional downtown. There were some uses that were in the TCC zone that probably would not normally be found in like a historic style downtown. When you look through the various municipalities in New Jersey that have those quintessential downtowns, you're not going to see a motel. So I think removing that would be consistent. The next piece is the 1984 Comprehensive Master Plan Goals and Objectives. Goal number 6 is to encourage the village neighborhood land use pattern. So the proposed ordinance does not wholly consist with this goal and objective. However, I do believe pieces of the proposed amendment encourage the village neighborhood land use pattern of the C1H zone. The removal of hotels and motels as permitted uses is consistent with this goal and objectives, as hotels mostly require a large building footprint that is incompatible with historic streetscapes. They include car-dependent patterns that undermine walkability and historic character. Once again, it's kind of taking away from that quintessential charm of a historic downtown. Similarly, chain hotels often require that kind of prototype design that clash with local architecture. However, the addition of a bed and breakfast inn as permitted conditionally is consistent with this goal and objective, but should consider requiring more design requirements being consistent with the architectural standards illustrated throughout Sparta, Lake Mohawk, and White Deer Plaza. I think it's pretty obvious to anyone who has visited the areas. There's definitely a very specific type of architecture, and I think developing something beyond the historic preservation standards and creating real true design guidelines and requirements would be beneficial, not just to the bed and breakfast use, but to the C1H as a whole. So any new development, inclusive of anything in and around it, would have those design guidelines, whether it's materials, articulations, window styles, things like that. I think signage, I think, would be really important and really beneficial. The amendment to the master plan from October 2nd in 2002. Another piece of that is number 16, encourage development and redevelopment for planned growth in the identified town center consistent with historic character of the White Deer Plaza and Main Street. The proposed amendment includes the addition of several lots to be placed in the C1H zone from the TCC zone. Many of these lots are located within White Deer Plaza, and the ordinance does not include those design guidelines for historic character, and further requirements pertaining to historical character would make the ordinance more compliant with the goals and objectives of the master plan amendment. I added some notes in here as well about the C1H zone because looking through the ordinance, I thought it was important for us to understand the purpose of the C1H zone. And the Comprehensive Land Management Code describes the purpose of the C1H zone as designed to provide for community commercial use with preservation of historic value of the commercial zone. And then it lists goals of the C1H zone. Once again, touching upon the architectural history. So as you can see, this is something that's very important. It's reiterated throughout your master plans and your reexamination reports. At this time, the C1H zone only refers to historic preservation, which is important because it's restoring historical character of buildings. However, it doesn't touch upon construction of new buildings. And I think that that is important to consider when new structures are being built, that they are cohesive with the existing architecture. I also wanted to note that the bulk requirements, I know this was a condition that came up, of the C1 zone will be present for the C1H zone and all of these properties that will now newly be put in there from the TCC zone. So their bulk requirements will follow the C1 zone. So in conclusion, the based upon the amendments of the Township Comprehensive Management Code. It's proposing to modify the permitted uses, zoning boundaries, and development controls within the C1H. The master plan and subsequent reexamination reports, they don't specifically contemplate bed and breakfast inns as a use, but I know in the past when we've done these master plan consistency reports, typically they don't contemplate one specific use. And so that's pretty common. However, the master plan and reexamination report do focus on the importance of design guidelines, appropriate uses within the downtown area, and appropriate uses to create transitions between residential areas and the downtown. Condition D of the proposed ordinance states, the intensity of use and the appearance of the structure shall be consistent with the neighborhood in which it is located. The residential character of the structure shall be maintained, and such signage shall be limited to the requirements of the zone in which the use is located. The C1H zone and the surrounding TCC zones are predominantly commercial in nature, so the ordinance has been written in a way that would be difficult to enforce. So I mean that in a way that if an application was to come in this board, there's not specific requirements. So it's very vague and at times could be somewhat subjective. So having maybe some more specific standards that are enforceable would help with creating that look that we anticipate to have as new development occurs in and around the White Deer Plaza area. So the board should also consider adding landscaping requirements, specific lighting and signage requirements for this use as well. I want to note that bed and breakfast accommodations provide an opportunity for tourists and residents, guests to experience this township's ambiance. Anyone who comes here, I know that when I come here, I always think like, what a beautiful place you guys all live in. I was speaking to Celeste yesterday and I was saying how lucky you guys all are to wake up and be located so close to a nice body of water. I'm from Bergen County, that's rare. An additional condition for consideration would also be to consider things like a traffic study to ensure that the proposed use would not increase traffic in an area heavily traversed by pedestrians. I know that area along West Shore Trail does become a bottleneck during certain times of the day. So maybe considering any applications that were to come forward as a requirement or as a condition, provide a traffic study or traffic counts for the uses that are being proposed. As many of you have known, circulation and traffic is a hot topic in Sparta. Having the circulation element, which was recently presented here, we had a room full of people. So we know traffic is an issue and it's something that should be considered. The master plan expressly reflects within its goals to continue to encourage the village neighborhood land use pattern. I encourage the board to consider these details when deciding as to consistency of the proposed ordinance amendment and the current master plan and subsequent reexamination reports. It is in my professional opinion that the proposed amendments to this ordinance, while not wholly consistent, I don't think that it is consistent. I think they're inconsistent. I think there are pieces of it that are consistent with your master plan. But like I said, I believe that adding some things such as a traffic study, signage requirements, and design requirements would make this proposed amendment more in line with your master plan and your forthcoming master plan, comprehensive master plan.
Thank you. Thank you. So before we bring it back up to the dais, there are a few members of the public here, which I'm sure they would like to speak. So there's a situation here where this is a consistency review. This is not the hearing. Even though you may want to have commentary relative to things that might be better suited to the hearing, I do want to give you an opportunity to speak, but we won't be able to answer you relative to those things. If you have a question regarding consistency, Lindsay or Ken can certainly answer that, but if you'd like to make a comment, please feel free, but understand that we won't be capable of responding, and we just want to allow you the opportunity to speak.
Celeste, before we do that, can we ask questions of Lindsay based on her report?
I'd like to get the public's opinion out there first, and then I'll bring it back to the dais.
Okay,
Okay.
anyone in the public? I'm not going to swear anyone in because you're just giving a statement. Okay, if you want to give your name and that you live in Sparta, there's no requirement to give you street address, just your name and if you live in town. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for the hard work that you do for our town and our citizens. My name is Bill Snyder. I'm at 14 Oak Parkway in Sparta. Just have a short statement that I'd like to read. For transparency, I'm a member of the Lake Mohawk Bylaws Committee, but I am speaking as a private citizen. 2 years ago, I also led a group of 11 Oak Parkway homeowners and worked closely with the Lake Mohawk Country Club trustees as well as the Sparta Town Council to develop our current LMCC and Sparta short-term rental policies. I'm in favor of changing the current White Deer Plaza zoning to the CH1 historic zoning. However, I do have concerns regarding the provision for a bed and breakfast in White Deer Plaza as proposed in the amendment. And I just hope that you would take these concerns under consideration in your decision-making process. I look at it more as kind of color commentary of what I experienced in some of the conflicts that I saw when placing short-term renters within a private community and the conflicts that I saw that create. My first concern is 2 years ago, the Sparta Town Council and LMCC trustees voted to limit short-term rentals. In the case of Sparta, no less than 28 days, and for LMCC, no less than 90 days. Lake Mohawk is a private lake community. Allowing a provision for a bed and breakfast business to be established here seems to me to be in opposition to our existing Sparta and LMCC short-term rental policies. My second concern is why White Deer Plaza? We talked about how busy that's getting, and it certainly is even hard to drive through sometimes in the weekend. Given the large geographic area of Sparta, why is this provision for a bed and breakfast being proposed for tiny congested White Deer Plaza? In my opinion, there's no significant benefit a bed and breakfast inn would bring to White Deer Plaza or the LMCC private community. The restaurants and businesses are prospering, and White Deer Plaza already jam-packed, especially on the weekends. In my opinion, the major benefactor would be the developer of a bed and breakfast who will use our community, as you were saying, how people love our community, and allusions to its private amenities to draw short-term renters. This is how past LMCC short-term rental properties were being promoted and advertised before they were eliminated by our short-term rental policies. They were certainly saying you could kayak on the lake, you could use the beaches. One property even, offered the use of an Olympic pool. So we know that that was happening, and I have concerns that that would happen again. I believe there are abundant opportunities in Sparta to create a successful bed and breakfast business outside of our private communities. And my third and maybe most important concern is our safety concerns. I believe that permitting a hoteling business in a private community will create a climate for confrontation between transient guests seeking access to the lake and its private amenities and club members. Confrontations between renters and club members occurred with past short-term rentals. I had the misfortune to live next to an Airbnb business on Oak Parkway and personally experience confrontations. There certainly is a potential for this with introducing short-term renters into the private community. I'm also really concerned about liability, and I'm certainly not a lawyer, but my concern is that, let's say, for example, returning late from one night after a wedding, let's say a group of bed and breakfast guests decide it'd be fun to grab a few beers and hang out on Beach One off the boardwalk. That this violates current LMCC policies. But who polices this situation? Is it LMCC? Is it the Sparta Police? Is it the bed and breakfast? I mean, I don't know the answer to those. Or will club members confront guests, with the potential for conflict? And I had heard stories of that happening several times around Lake Mohawk on beaches and different areas, and not only in Lake Mohawk, but around Sparta, but particularly the ones I know are in Lake Mohawk. To take it one step further, and again, it's a liability question, if one of the guests decide to go swimming, late at night and unfortunately drowns, who's liable for that? Is it LMCC? Is it Sparta? Is it bed and breakfast business? Again, I don't know the answer to these, but I think these are very important safety issues to consider in your decision-making process. And I thank you very much for your consideration of these points.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Sabina Watson. I do not reside in Sparta, New Jersey. However, I am acting interim general manager for Lake Mohawk Country Club, and I wanted to offer a point of clarity, and that is specific to the architecture that you're referencing here continually in White Deer Plaza. And it's actually a style that is listed on the National Registry of Architecture as Lake Mohawk Tudor. So it is official, and that is what we are striving to maintain. It is the only location where Lake Mohawk Country Club has the ability to do so because of the restrictions to any kind of structural change within a historic district. The rest of the community is not under any kind of restrictions as such, and therefore it is pretty vital that we maintain that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I needed half an hour to get to the mic. Beth Broderick, Sparta. You guys already know what I think about traffic and congestion. I am not going to go there, but I think that we need to look at the environmental impact of this because the lake drains right there. If you're down by Senators, that's the Wallkill River that goes to Ogdensburg, Franklin, and a whole bunch of other places. We pay a stupid amount of money for water quality. Sabina has bent over backwards for years to make it go from pea soup to where you can see the bottom of the lake. That kind of stuff needs to be taken into consideration, in addition to the safety, the traffic that we pay to maintain all of the roads except for 8. It's a safety issue. When you're looking at trying to pull out of the gas station, it's a problem. You're looking at apartments, putting in God knows what, where Carl's Auto Body used to be. I was late, so I don't know. Now you're looking at the possibility of bed and breakfasts and stuff like that in an already congested area. I don't know if you're up here on the weekends, but from right before Memorial Day until Labor Day, if you go through there on a Saturday, you've got the ski hawks, you've got everybody else going through there. We're already working on safety measures. Don't make it worse because no, I know you didn't. I'm just saying, no, I know it's not you. No, that's not. But the other question I have is with the ordinance, I'm not sure who actually writes the ordinances, but Lake Mohawk and Sparta share an attorney. So I want to make sure that we don't have, again, I don't know how all that works, but I just kind of want to put that out there. And the other thing to tie into is that Lake Mohawk is private. We have to make sure that, and I don't know if this is a you thing or the board thing, but consider that we are private and we need to make sure that we clarify the responsibility. So if something happens with a guest, visitor, whatever, that they're not doing anything to jeopardize us and our safety and the privacy of Lake Mohawk. Please, I'm really done with being on a walker and in a boot. Can we please make sure that all of that is addressed and taken into consideration?
Those are all things that we want on record so that the council can, I mean, we have a council representative. He can take all that back because, not that you won't be there, because I'm sure you will, walker and all.
Oh, just like usual. I was late or I'd be in my regular spot.
But yeah, then we wanted to make sure that the public had the opportunity to speak, whether it be here or at the hearing.
And this would be, forgive me, I don't know bylaws, would you guys or whoever makes the decision make sure that it's consistent with Lake Mohawk bylaws?
That's a council issue. We don't make
And
the law.
not in conflict with charters and stuff like that?
It's on record. You now
Okay.
have said it. It's on record. And our council
Yeah,
liaison has heard
unfortunately,
you.
I'll say unfortunately, the planning board, we're only tasked with the master plan consistency.
Okay.
So we unfortunately can't look at anything beyond that.
Okay.
Right, but we do have a council liaison who can bring it back, and I'm sure you're going to repeat yourself when you are at the hearing on Tuesday.
Yeah, we got a guy.
Oh, yeah, I will, don't worry.
And I would encourage anyone that's speaking to mark your calendars also for when the hearing is, so that you can bring your comments directly to the council, so that they can hear it directly. Obviously, there's a recording of this meeting. I'm sure that Deputy Mayor Sylvester will bring back those comments, but I think that you should all be encouraged to mark your calendars for next week as well and come in person and speak. Just be mindful that you'll be limited there to 5 minutes. So
Mike, is it on the calendar for Tuesday?
I thought that's when is it not on the agenda? Oh, look, we have to check the agenda.
Agenda's
Is it
gonna
not-
be out on Friday, but it's tentative.
So people should check on Friday, the agenda on spartanj.org to confirm when it's going to be heard and then make arrangements to come to that. Sorry.
No problem. Stephen Giles, I am a Sparta resident. I'm also on the Board of Trustees for Lake Mohawk Country Club and a member of the reservation. So just want to make a couple of comments for your consideration. There's been a lot of talk around architectural standards, about signage, et cetera, et cetera. Having looked at the ordinance in the way that I have, I believe there's a lot of safeguards already in there. If we want to add more, I'm always very supportive of that, because if you look at what we're trying to do, we're trying to put in some added protections for our historic district, which we all love and enjoy. The second thing I would bring to your attention, and this has been a lot of talk about bed and breakfast, and it seems to have caused a lot of concern. If you choose to do nothing tonight, that is currently a TCC zone where bed and breakfast is actually a permitted use. There are no conditions associated with it. So anyone at present can set up a bed and breakfast with no conditions attached. The new ordinance has removed what we believe to be an inappropriate use, which would be the hotels and motels, but replaced it with something that actually has conditions attached to it, which we believe is a much safer protection. So from that perspective, we're very supportive of that change to the ordinance, because at the moment we have none of those protections in place. And many of the concerns I've heard raised are absolutely correct. However, that use exists today. Thank you.
So Steve, just a confirmation real quick.
Yeah, sure.
At the member meeting, it came up that originally the club, I believe, took the position that they were not excited really about any of the lodging being in the ordinance, correct?
Yes, if you'll permit me to give some history, that's absolutely true. Yeah, so when we were initially talking and looking at the C1H and how we felt it would best benefit, we were looking to remove all lodging. We certainly didn't feel that hotels and motels was appropriate. And at that time, bed and breakfast isn't in C1H anyhow. So it was removed. The first time the ordinance was brought forward for introduction, it was actually tabled. So I heard your process questions as well. The ordinance has actually been tabled, I think, 3 times before finally being introduced. So it has been round multiple times. The concern at council when it first came was that there was a total removal of lodging, which they felt was inappropriate because lodging is something that the area needs. The other thing that initially held the council's concern was they felt that it was too restrictive on offices and commercial uses moving forward. So anything that was existing and non-conforming would be there, but there wasn't an appropriate section that would allow for that. So the changes that were really primarily made, whether you would deem them material or not, was to put those 2 things in as conditional uses. So the conditional uses that you see in the ordinance are very specific to bed and breakfast and very specific to new retail and office spaces. The challenge we then had is the existing ordinance that relates to bed and breakfast. As a reference, what does bed and breakfast mean was just a single paragraph, which actually referred to an organisation that no longer exists. So part of what the ordinance is also seeking to achieve is to clarify exactly what a bed and breakfast is and to add those additional conditions into the C1H. So that's how it circled back, I guess, and eventually was introduced, I guess, 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ernie has a question. Oh, a question of.
I'm sorry.
No, I'll wait till you're done. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Jenny Derricks. In the 84 master plan, in one of the objectives under number 6 is to preserve the unique visual character of Lake Mohawk, the private community, in order to enhance its attractive appearance and ensure its future viability as an asset to the township and not a liability. And I'm sure in 1984, there was a reason for them to add that last bit of, and not a liability. But when looking at the new proposed language, and I'm just wondering, how does this relate to a consistent review with the master plan, where they're proposing to add language, oh, I just lost it, shoot. Oh, here it is. Under institutional use, under section 4, institutional uses and nonprofit clubs, this is number 5 under section 4. And it adds private, recreational, and residential homeowners association. So I don't know how, does the planning board need to know a little bit more about what the intention of the country club is there in order to say whether or not it's consistent with the master plan? The adding those two opportunities as principal permitted uses seems like it could also add more to the use or whatever is going on in the club other than what's happening now, or is this codifying what's currently happening? I'm trying to,
That sounds more like codifying
Yeah,
what's
I think it's
happening.
just
You have
trying to
the
make
tennis
it-
club, which has a number of members in it, which is a
Yeah.
sports club. You have the Elks on the Boardwalk, which is a
right, that, the Elks and so forth, service organizations was already there, but the language that's being added is,
I think it's because it's putting uses in the C1H zone and trying not to make the club non-conforming. So it can, so that if they were to change anything, it wouldn't require variance relief. I think that's the intent. I mean, I didn't write the ordinance, but I would assume that the purpose is to those existing membership-based uses to be able to continue being conforming with the zone.
okay. Thank you. And then the only other question I had is the removal of churches. Because in the other area of town where there's a C1H, there is a church, my understanding. So why would you remove it, making it a non-conforming?
It's interesting, if you look to the borough of Rutherford.
Bless you.
there- bless you. They have the old Rivoli Theater that has gone to the Williams Center of Performing Arts, and now it has become rented out to a church organization, and it has very mixed reviews, not because of the religion, but because of the impact of the traffic and the activity. And your community, you know best, through Memorial Day, through Labor Day, if you introduce a church into that downtown, I don't think it has anything to do with religion. I just don't think the traffic could handle it. That's my understanding.
Okay, it makes sense. That's why I was asking.
And I think churches also are just, from a legal standpoint, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, they're protected in a different way in terms of if they were to locate in certain areas where churches are not expressly permitted. I think they have a different kind of circumstance of proving their benefits to the community because they're considered inherently beneficial.
So how could they not? To Jenny's point, why would they be removed? Why would,
Well,
they're being looked
I
at
think
not as
the-
beneficial to the community?
I think they're being removed because if you think about, like Ken was just saying, they
They have certain intensities.
6 days of the week
Yeah.
not normally utilized. So to have a church in the middle of your downtown where you're trying to promote walkability and have a use that most of the time is not being used, I think is the concern. So they want to have kind of pedestrian scale type uses that encourage people walking in and out of the shops, walking down the street, looking in the windows, whereas the church,
So uses that encourage the density and intensity versus just,
I think uses that just encourage people being in your downtown and visiting your businesses.
Thank you.
I think there's plenty of churches around that they have a lot of different groups come in and use their rooms,
Yeah.
which would serve that purpose.
I think churches also traditionally require a lot more parking. So in a downtown, you don't
Parking, there's
necessarily
whole
want a
parking.
large surface parking lot to accommodate the church.
I mean, if you want to make a recommendation, church remain in, that's part of your advisory abilities, if you want that.
Actually put in that having the theaters removed was, I mean, you think of like Paper Mill Playhouse in Millburn, sometimes theaters are, or,
Parking.
Morristown or kind of, what was that, Joan?
There's no parking for something like a theater.
Anyone else from the
Only a church,
public
though.
who'd like to speak, make a statement? Okay, seeing none, we're going to bring it back up to the dais for questions. Oh, that's right, I apologize. Ernie had another question of Steve.
We're listening to the public and speaking, it just really kind of jogged my memory and everything else. You know, gentleman talked about the bed and breakfasts. I had the same issue on my street that you had on yours. I'm on
Ernie, can you
Balsam,
pull your microphone down?
Yep.
Thank you.
one road down from you. So, and we had that issue there with somebody who not only, you know, was lakefront, let them use their boats, everything else under the sun. And I see the one problem I see with this, and I think it's the complication of it being, we're talking about the town ordinance, but we're also looking at the country club's bylaws and everything else. And I think my question would be for Sabine is that, you know, because it's in Lake Mohawk, the property's in Lake Mohawk and deeded to Lake Mohawk, does that mean that anyone staying there would basically be considered a house guest and would have privileges to use lake property?
No, I do not believe that's the case. We do have a separation or an identification of people who are utilizing properties as renters or as guests, and they are restricted from the amenities.
Okay, that's, so that may help some of the issue with, you know, where we're talking about the difficult interactions, you know, if that's, hopefully the person operating it would make that very clear.
That's always the issue. Yeah.
So, I'm sorry, if I could get clarification on that. So Lake Mohawk, I know they do have limitations on short-term rentals, right? Didn't we say 90 days?
That's
is the
correct.
minimum? So those people would not be able to use the amenities.
No.
But there are long-term rentals, 1 year plus, that can get.
With additional purchase
Exactly.
of tenant,
Okay, I
tenant
just
privileges. They're limited.
Right, thank you.
No problem.
Just a quick question. When the events are held at the club, I would imagine some of them run later in the night, let's say 8 to 11 or something like that. Is that fair to say that there are events, birthday parties or whatever, it'll be a Saturday or a Sunday?
That's correct. Some of them do run to around 11 o'clock, a little bit after that. Very rarely do I see anything
And I
that's
mean,
booked
they're
for after.
beautiful facilities. If someone was
Thank
to
you.
say that I wanted to even have a wedding or something like that, and the wedding party wanted to have a place to stay over, is the lake, is the club against a bed and breakfast that a small that could accommodate? I'm just trying to understand the role of who comes to you in your weddings or birthday parties. Are they seeking lodging at all? Or how do you handle those issues? If I had a couple of drinks at night and I was looking for someplace close that I don't have to drive a distance, where do people go now?
So, if you're in the industry, you know that the trend is to actually have on-site overnight lodging. And it can be anywhere from a couple of units to 20, 30. But that's not what Lake Mohawk is really looking to provide by any means, not at least from my perspective and understanding of the Board of Trustees. As far as the membership, we have not been polling them, but it's definitely similar to here where we do have a fair amount of residents that come out when there are these topics coming up at our monthly meetings. And it tends to be pluses and minuses. And right now, I wouldn't even hazard to guess if it was put forward to membership. What we definitely recommend for particularly weddings is the area hotels, and everyone seems to understand that shuttling is the way to go. And there's a couple of companies that adequately supply that service.
I can actually speak to that on a personal level. I had my wedding at Lake Mohawk Country Club in 2010, and I had shuttle service for my guests because my wedding was a 150-person wedding. So whether there was a bed and breakfast across the street or not, it would not have accommodated the volume of people because my party was largely from out of town, and they took over 35 rooms in that hotel. So that seems to be an adequate method and has worked, I think, pretty.
It's worked
pretty
well.
well across the board. Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the important thing to note also is that
Microphone.
where this is not like a.
Microphone.
To the points that were made before, I think the important thing to note as well, and again, when we're talking about density and all that stuff, this is not a tourist spot. This is not a hot spot. This is not a Newport or a, you know what I mean? Like any kind of tourist town. It's not set up like that.
Jersey Shore.
The roads are small, you know what I mean? And I think to the other question, Jenny, you brought something up I just wanted to touch on because when you brought up that section, it's in one of my questions. There's also where it says recreation and purposes, it says for HOAs with no less than 300 residents in there. So my question is, why is that there? So you could go in there if you're an HOA, but only if you have 300 people, could you put something in there? Like, I don't understand how that works. I guess we can get into that when we get into
Yeah,
the
we're-
actual ordinance,
We're gonna,
but Jenny brought it up and I think it's a good point. And I think if you go 5 words down from where she was asking that question, there's that weird little thing on the end of that. And I didn't really understand what that was all about.
Yeah, I mean, nobody here wrote the ordinance, so I don't really know
Right.
the intention behind it.
Okay.
so bringing it back to the dais, I know, Joan, you had
Well, I want to do
questions.
like some more just general questions.
Yeah.
To Sabina and Steve. If bed and breakfast were not included in here, what would you see going in instead?
As I previously said, we were not seeking to have bed and breakfast or hotels and motels in there. That is more a question for your council.
Can you speak into that?
Yeah, sorry,
No,
that-
Just raise it up. Just, there you go. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
that's more a question for your council because they felt that it was inappropriate to remove lodging in its entirety from the zone. That's how motels and hotels were removed, but bed and breakfast was added as a conditional use.
I
But
think,
what would you like
ask
to
was,
see
yeah, what
instead?
would you like? What recommendations can this board make for you?
Our choice would be,
organization.
not to have motels, hotels, or bed and breakfast. However, we also recognise that there is a requirement for lodging in the area, and if it's under conditional use and there are appropriate conditions in place, then bed and breakfast is a viable alternative.
Because I'm thinking of a couple things too, because the C1H also includes, as we said before, down on Route 94. Perhaps it can go there.
Well, there are other zones, just so you know.
And there are, yeah.
There are other zones in town that allow bed and breakfasts and hotels and motels.
The current
that are-
zone
No, what I'm
being one
saying,
of them.
It's not just in that C1H zone.
Yeah.
So there are other zones in town where they are permitted.
Yeah.
Well, my
So-
question would be, are we limiting potential development out on Route 94? Are we devaluing these properties because we're focusing right on White Deer Plaza and we're not being all
We're not talking
encompassing?
about it, and this whole ordinance is written around it, and there's no reference to the other one whatsoever. So for me, that's inconsistent, but.
To answer your question, the ordinance that is being proposed beyond bed and breakfast, right? There's other things proposed within this. And one of them is for the C1H zone. So those properties out there, they would be removing the uses of hotels, motels, public buildings and uses, opera houses, theatrical and motion picture theaters and churches.
But those are large plots of land that could potentially be a boutique hotel or something.
That's why I'm asking if we somehow,
I know, but you're still
Wouldn't it be easy?
potentially hurting them out there.
So to that point, process question.
Yeah.
Why is this all being lumped together? So just as in my head, I'm asking you guys, you're the professionals. To me, it would make more sense to not devaluate or touch the properties on Route 94 that have enough space for these uses, a church, a bed and breakfast, a hotel, a motel, whatever it might be. Wouldn't it make more sense to leave them alone in what they're in and then create a zone for Lake Mohawk Historic, work with Lake Mohawk to figure out what goes in there and like put that part kind of off and leave the C1H people alone? Because honestly, there is a very large amount of change here that a lot of these uses that are being removed could very well be utilized at that property with no problem at all. A hotel, a motel, a church, even if they put in like a little theater up there. And by removing all of this, to his point, it really gives the appearance, and even in the actual way this is written, the very first paragraph says Lake Mohawk. So what does that have to do with the C1H people up on Route 94? It has no.
We're going to let Jenny ask her.
Sorry to
Just use the mic, please.
Sorry to interrupt. Is this, because I was looking at this as a modification, so what you're reviewing right now is a modification of what exists. So if there are things that are already on the books, these are being inserted or overlaid or usurp some of the language of the C1H that's already on the books. So it wouldn't affect the parcels on
It
94.
absolutely will affect it.
Well, they may
Well,
be,
other
if
than
they're
removing-
pre-existing, they'd now be pre-existing non-conforming
But it's not-
uses. So if they had expansions, now they'd have to
Right,
come.
no, that part I understand, but what I mean is that the language of this ordinance that you're reviewing, and I'm just trying to understand if I'm looking at this right, the ordinance is not a complete ordinance. This is the parts of the ordinance that are being changed, that are changing the existing
This is the-
C1H.
it's
This is
changing
the-
from TCC.
No, but there's,
This is changing.
no, that part,
The C1H zone, period. And any properties in it would be held to what's in this
right, but there are
ordinance.
some things that are not addressed in the draft that you have that are, because it goes section, and it doesn't start necessarily section this, section that. There are things that are not included in the draft that you're looking at that are going to remain from the existing C1H. Is that, so this is an amendment of the
But
existing
there's a lot
C1H?
that's being removed.
Right, but this is an amendment. That's what I wanted to make sure. This isn't
But
just
it
a
changes
whole.
the land use of those parcels. So right now, there's not a hotel there.
No,
If they wanted to build it, they now cannot.
Right. I just wanted to make sure I was understanding. I'm sorry to interrupt.
You're
Can you
correct.
clarify this?
Okay, so this ordinance has pieces that are being added to the C1H zone. It also includes pieces of the existing C1H zone that will be removed. However, anything that's not touched upon in this amendment will remain. Additionally, this talks about the zoning map, and what it is saying in the zoning map are the block and lots that were in the TCC, and it identifies those, and that is the map that I provided you with, identifying the lots that were formerly in the TCC zone that will now be in the C1H zone and will now fall under the requirements of the C1H zone, inclusive of the proposed amendments. So, for example, the C1H zone, when it talks about bulk requirements, it refers back to the C1 zone. So the bulk requirements for these lots will be what is in the C1 zone. It refers to the historic preservation guidelines. These lots will now be subject to the historic preservation guidelines. So anything that's currently existing and is not saying in this ordinance that is being removed from the C1H will continue to exist in the C1H zone as zoning requirements.
But under the revised zoning, right?
The revised zoning is adding the conditional use of the bed and breakfast, adding these lots, and then adding the, I believe, definition of a bed and breakfast inn.
While also removing
While
Removing
also
hotels.
removing an
hotels,
entire
motels,
list of
churches.
uses.
I'm not there yet, yeah.
Right,
So
okay.
then that's the next piece. I'm still going over what's being added.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so it has the conditions, it has the principal permitted uses, and that's where it removes the churches, public buildings, theaters. Those are all being removed, and these will be the list for permitted uses.
Yeah.
Prime
yeah.
property
Yeah.
for a lot of that.
And that's been.
And the other thing, again, at that Monroe section, that on the other end of town, as someone pointed out, there's an old church there that is vacant right now.
Yeah.
But if somebody decided they wanted to bring that church back alive, it would not be a permitted use.
It would be,
Not been
it would be
operating
an
as a
ex-
church for years.
it would be an existing non-conforming because it runs with the land. But to your
they
point,
couldn't- they
Ernie,
couldn't add on
if
to
they
it.
added on to it,
Yeah.
Right.
it would then require expansion of a non-conforming
Or
use.
if it burned down, if something horrible happened and you have something out there that's already being used and it burns down, there's an accident or something like that,
Or
they
it
would
needed
not just be able to
substantial
rebuild.
renovation.
Question, did the historic registration and also apply to those properties as well? Out there, or just,
Yeah, the C1H zone, the historic preservation is referenced in it.
it's referenced, but
But
Steve,
the-
it-
Yeah, they're two different things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a couple things too with historic preservation as well. Historic preservation is, for lack of a better word, quite subjective. And so that's why when I speak about having requirements, making the requirements actual part of your zoning ordinance, so you have to do it, as opposed to suggestions,
so
essentially.
if they apply to those parcels out there, they support the comments that are coming down from this end of the dais, that you've just kind of devalued or restricted.
Those properties have been in this C1H zone.
But they've been allowed to have all these different uses and they have not been held accountable to the architecture, for example, Sabine was talking about, which is very specific to
The
Lake
historic
Mont.
preservation is not being added. It's existing in your ordinance today.
It's gonna
Right,
put.
but design
You're talking
standards.
is the standard historic
So
preservation
when I'm talking
guidelines,
about
right?
doing design standards, I'm saying under the conditions of the bed and breakfast.
So if we were
Totally.
doing
Oh,
our,
yes, okay, so I,
See where I'm going?
right,
Because
so.
if you're gonna restrict, if those are if those properties are
Yeah,
deemed
you don't
as
want,
into the
those are
historic
now, yeah, you're
preservation,
requiring them to look like White Deer Plaza, yeah.
you know as well as what I know, how difficult that is to go
Right.
anything through historic
He-
preservation.
Absolutely, yes. And historic preservation many times, unfortunately, don't necessarily have the teeth, right? So by putting design guidelines on this bed and breakfast use, if something was to be built and constructed, it would then have to be
Because
following
it's a
those-
conditional use, right?
Yes.
And that's the thing. We
That's
don't
a
want a conditional
condition.
use to fall back under a unilateral, situation.
I think I got there.
Yeah.
All right.
As part of this consistency review, can we recommend that we just remove the Route 94 lots from this particular?
Yes.
Understand that's a
Yes.
mis-
Wait a
Yes.
second, wait a minute,
Yes.
wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. I would, so to your point, that was what I was kind of saying before, but I think they never left that zone. Oh, where's my thing? They never left that zone. They've been in that zone the whole time, tried and true. They didn't jump out, they didn't jump back. I think it's better, my opinion, to leave them alone, let them stay where they are under exactly what they, sorry, that's okay. Exactly what they are now, and talk about, is it better to carve out a specific zone Lake Mohawk Historic, where all the nuances that Sabine is talking about and that Steve is talking about, and if bed and breakfast and all these things shouldn't be there, they'd have more, they could work with, and build that to be. But I think when I look at this, the more we talk about it, and Brian's comments and your comments and everybody's comments, this just seems incredibly short-sighted when it comes to the parcels, the 9 parcels, because I have the map, that chose not to jump out of the zone. Why should they be penalized and their land not, you know what I mean? So from if we're talking about consistent and fair and all of that, and I know there's a whole term for consistent and all of that kind of stuff, but for me, I agree with you, Jeanette, 100%. I think that they should be left alone and figure out the rest of it separate and apart from those 9 parcels out there. And Brian, with you too, and Birgit and
Well,
Joan.
We haven't even gotten to my whole thing about the bed and
No.
breakfast section of the ordinance, and I have a lot.
We haven't even gotten to
We
that
haven't
yet.
even gotten there.
Yeah, so.
Well, this is a shame because, we thought that Lake Mohawk and whoever was writing this and everybody was speaking together, working together, and it doesn't seem to be, and we've left out this other zone. And what is, part of the problem is, we're talking about all of this for master plan. We're like now deep in the middle of it. And we're trying to determine what's going to go in each zone. That's a function of the planning board and the master plan. And we're kind of being deprived of that opportunity to do that. I don't understand the rush here at all. I think we need to really think this through. I think it is inconsistent. And let's everybody get in a room, not us, but you get in a room and talk it out and figure out what you really need. And based on our recommendations, because we are talking about all of these things. The other thing that was missing, I think, from the report, Lindsay, and that I wanted to ask you about was banks are also left out of it. So that wasn't mentioned. So that was taken out. And also the second floor apartments over retail. So, we've focused so much on bed and breakfast, but there's a lot more to this that we haven't even discussed.
Well, Joan, isn't the if you go down White Deer Plaza, right?
Yeah.
It's all apartments over residential there.
Right, but there's something in here that says only if
Move it.
you're existing. So we're going to still have
Right.
like a blighted building if it's not going to be B and B, and what's it going to be?
But if
That's why I'm
that
asking,
was in
what
there,
else
it
do
could
you-
almost be an extension of White Deer Plaza if you had retail on the bottom and apartments on the top.
Yes, right.
But it's
Otherwise,
removed,
it's spot zoning, because you're signaling, that's the only building left. You could do spot zoning, and that is illegal.
You're also
Oh,
So we're
leaving out-
setting up for lawsuits.
I'm not sure what the current Downing's furniture property is operating as, but that was furniture store down below, and the Downing family, which I grew up with, they were living upstairs. So you just
It's
took that
everywhere,
away.
yeah. So
Again.
you can't
And that's-
single out one
What
building.
is
We
that
have to
right now?
protect everybody. That's our job.
But it's right.
Sorry, I must just point out that it hasn't been removed. It's in there as a conditional use.
Wait, what?
Yeah, it's still, it's in
Apartments
here.
over retail
but
is
it would
there,
be
new apartments over retail is in there as a conditional use.
Conditional use.
Okay, conditional.
Yeah, that was confusing because I saw it in two
Which is what it
parts.
is in the existing C1H, I believe.
I saw it in two separate sections, so that's why I was going to ask about it, because it said one thing in one section and something different in another.
Would it be clear here that, we're talking about what's the rush? Is the rush basically that right now Marriott could put in application to build a hotel and the present zoning allows it, and so the rush is to head that off? Is that what the rush is, to
I don't know what
not
the
have a
rush is.
hotel or,
Well, I mean, we
I
have
was
the,
just given
the
an
the
ordinance
interim
to-
GM.
This was brought up originally to really go back to getting this back to the C1H historic guidelines for its design standards.
Yeah.
Giving Lake Mohawk what they felt they wanted control of. Simply, like, just on that level, I think we all agree that's a good thing. There's no
Yeah.
debating that. We want Lake Mohawk to maintain and preserve the design standards under the previous ordinance that they once had.
Then why not go
Steve-
back to that
Steve-
ordinance
Steve
until we
con-
have time?
Confirmed right now, all these other things that you're discussing, that some of these things are, the B and Bs, all these things are permitted use now,
Mm-hmm.
as we speak, right?
No.
Yes,
Yeah,
they are.
In the TCC,
Conditional, as a conditional.
not as a
No,
conditional. You
because
can
they're
outright, if
TCC
I
in the
wanted to
zone they're in right
tomorrow,
now.
go
Yes,
put an
that's what I'm saying.
application in for a bed and breakfast in the TCC zone, I could.
They could,
If I could leave here and go tomorrow morning, 8 a.m., show up and do it. So with no conditions, right?
In the TCC.
Yes.
Right.
But they're,
Which these lots are currently in the TCC. So if I wanted to tomorrow wake up and say, I'm gonna put an application in TCC zone, which these lots are in, right? I could go tomorrow and do that.
well,
I think the intention is putting it in the C1H because it has that historic nature, right? So that there are some, and then what I've gathered here from Mr. Giles is that they understand that by removing hotels, motels, there still may need to be some kind of use that permits lodging. Obviously, I don't know. That's the decision that was made, and it seems like there's been discussions, and they seem to have agreed that they're comfortable with it as a conditional use because it gives it more requirements as opposed to how it is today. I could show up and say I'm putting a bed and breakfast here and not live on the property and just say it's a bed and breakfast.
so if we recommended to the council that they leave C1H alone, 94, Route 94, those parcels of property, leave it alone, and establish a new zone, LMCC historic, take the wording that is in the ordinance, take out bed and breakfast, hotels, and motels. In 2 meetings, Lake Mohawk could be protected and not have to worry about hotels, motels, or bed and breakfasts. That gives the master plan committee time to even identify what a bed and breakfast is properly. And it also gives Lake Mohawk time. They would have their own, a zone that they would truly have more control over. And they could put in and customize it more to them. That could be done if the recommendation comes from here to the council, that could be implemented almost immediately. And you would be protected, so you would get what you want. The master plan subcommittee could take a step back, and you're already working on these definitions and identifications. This way, if the club decides they want a bed and breakfast type thing, you guys could come back and make an application to add it to your zone, to amend your zone. But you wouldn't have to start off with it, because it sounds like that's something that you guys were not excited about in the first place. So, and that could be done pretty quickly, right?
I can't be.
Well, right, I mean,
Ken, you want to
I can speak on behalf of
think
the
what we're
governing
looking
body,
for-
but I can only, I'm gonna just give you the blanket statement. I'm here just for consistency.
I know,
for the
You're-
master
know.
plan.
We're
Yeah.
all looking at
I
you
plead
because
the
that's the way
fifth.
we're facing.
Yeah.
We're not putting you on that.
Thank you, Mike.
Right?
I feel like you should come and sit up here with us so you
I
could look
think we
out.
really need to, Ken, hearing all these conversations, what's the fix?
well, wait
You're-
one
you're
second.
hearing all these things.
I just want to hear what Sabina has to say.
Okay, so just for clarity, again, and we had gone round and round, and even before the C1H was considered, that is exactly the scenario that was proposed to the township. However, we were discouraged from doing that because of the process and the complication and the time frame that was involved with adding another zoning district into Sparta Township. At this point in time, that was so long ago. This has been going on for, in essence, 2, 3, am I right?
A minimum of 3 years.
Minimum of 3 years.
3 years?
Yes. This is a 3-year road that we've been on. So we have been, and I don't mean to, sound excited, but it's almost as if I can just about see, a sliver of light at that end of the tunnel, and then it's like dark. But when you read your current C1H Community Commercial Historic Zone, after the purpose, the first bullet point or the first number is accomplish the protection, enhancement, and perpetuation of the Lake Mohawk Plaza area. That is how your current C1H Community Commercial Historic District Zone reads now, which, I'm sorry, the plaza is no part of that. So we were recommended to go and get into there. And that is where we were originally. And the reason for going into the TCC was actually also in consideration and cooperation with Sparta Township for obviously getting funding from the state. Exactly. It wasn't as if we were just like, okay, yeah, we want to do a hopscotch from one to the other. It was in cooperation fully with Sparta Township. And taking advantage of that so that we could be enveloped and become more consistent with the overall plan for Sparta Township and their streetscape project. So at this point, it's almost as if going backward and trying to create our own zoning district is a step back. I definitely appreciate the fact that taking those uses out completely definitely has an impact on the other properties in that other parcel that's now currently also C1H. I'm not 100% sure how they ended up in that, quite frankly. If it blatantly was originated for the use, for the parcels in White Deer Plaza. So that's.
A twist on what you're saying, Chris, is instead, because there's not a whole lot going on out there right now anyway, I don't think anything's imminent. Maybe make the suggestion to the council that they make a new zone out of that one out there.
Yeah.
Leave them in this, they'll be in that one, there's gonna be a change, they'll be in that, and then they can add a new zone and put those things back in out there.
But the problem, I'm just totally agree. I mean, it's 6 of one and a half dozen of
Yeah,
another.
but
The
we're
problem
solving
is-
their problem, and
The
we'd also eventually solve the other problem.
Correct, but the problem is, while that's all happening, I mean, right now, nothing's going on out there at all, but we don't want to put them in a bad spot either. And if we do this with, which totally agreed, we could flip-flop it. We could say, okay, Route 94, you're in this zone, we're now gonna call it this zone, and we're gonna give you all this stuff back, you know what I mean? The other thing is, it sounds like even if this went forward, that maybe hotels, motels, and bed and breakfast should be removed from it.
To be fair, okay, we are in the middle of a master plan. So all of this is going to be reevaluated in the land use element anyway, within the next 2 months. So we do want to make sure that Lake Mohawk has the protections that it should have. We do want to make sure that Route 94 has, the versatility that it may want. Here's the issue. We don't have anybody from Route 94 out here right now having a conversation with us saying that they absolutely have an eminent need for hotels, motels, and bed and breakfasts. We do, however, have members of a private community saying, we really need to have protections put in place, right? And a lot of this, as interesting as it is and as good of a conversation it is as it is not within our purview, right? We're talking about how to craft an ordinance. We're talking about the suggestions that we're going to make, within the confines of our recommendations. We are a bit outside of our, of our lane in terms of consistency review for the ordinance that's been presented to us as it is, meaning the amendments that have been presented to the C1H ordinance as we have them. So the question then becomes, right, how do we proceed? Yes, we have a list of things, but we are going to leave it to Ken to give us a little bit on process.
All right, I've been taking some notes,
question.
if I could, though. I've been taking some notes. I mean, we're almost at 9 o'clock, and we got other things. Task before you on your agenda is the ordinance 26-07. Is it consistent or non-consistent with the master plan? I think the consensus is that it's inconsistent as presented, and I would say that I could report to the mayor and council that was the review, inconsistent because of, number one, concerns over the historic preservation design standards, a traffic impact study, signage, and landscaping. That is under one category. Number two, concerns over Route 94, the C1H current uses becoming possibly inconsistent and affecting economic growth. Number three, rather than ordinance 26-07, possibly creating new zones, a new Lake Mohawk Historic District or a new Route 94 district. Those are my primary notes, and my last note was that these issues should also be addressed at the master plan review, which we were before. That's what I have.
What about bed and breakfast, hotel, and motel?
Yeah, that's part of the concerns over landscaping, signage, traffic, historic preservation, design.
Well, that doesn't say hotels.
We can say
motels.
whatever you want. We can say whatever you want.
I'm just saying that's a density issue too.
So when I reviewed the ordinance, if part of our review here tonight is, does this have adequate protections? In my opinion, the bed and breakfast portion does not have sufficient protections. There's not a definition of a bed and breakfast that is in the traditional sense of a bed and breakfast. I mean, when I read Section 2A, I found it to be extremely poorly written, and it was very confusing, and it almost sounds like it's not a bed and breakfast. A bed and breakfast, let's all think back to the 1980s sitcom Newhart. That's a bed and breakfast. Bob and Joanna ran a bed and breakfast. They owned the property, they lived there, he worked there, they had a housekeeper, they had a certain number of rooms for sale, I mean, for rent. Nowhere in this ordinance is that made clear.
Birgit,
Someone
I'm
who
so sorry.
resides-
Can I
what?
interrupt you for 1 second? Because
Yeah.
we have a few members who need a bio break.
Oh, yeah.
So I apologize.
yeah.
So we're going to do 5 minutes.
Okay. That's great. And just while we're thinking, I'm putting on my notes, I'm going to add another paragraph as to the bed and breakfast issues. The board finds the present proposal is too vague, sufficient safeguards, and possibly inconsistent with the Lake Mohawk rules and regulations. So we'll leave at that thought.
While you're thinking, put in the design standards too, because that's a big
Yes.
piece of it.
Yes.
Would you like another Altoid before we begin round two?
Lived in those rooms.
Are you sure?
You know what I mean? And they,
Oh, look at you. Okay, together we're Christmas. Red and green.
I do warn everyone, though, I'm like, they're great, they clear your sinuses.
They're spice, my minis, my littles, called spicy.
Not sure.
That's what they call seltzers. They're spicy waters.
Okay.
Yeah, this is something.
Okay, so we are back. And so Ken, from what I understand, you've crafted.
I think in fairness, some of the members just wanted to conclude their thoughts for possible inclusion. My preliminary notes now are, the proposed ordinance is inconsistent with Sparta's existing master plan. That proposed ordinance is 26-07. Based upon the testimony, one of the main issues is the current Route 94 C1H uses that do permit bed and breakfasts, churches and the like should remain. Another issue as to the bed and breakfast proposed conditional uses, they're too vague, insufficient design standards, lack of historic district protections, need for landscaping signage and traffic impact as to the same. Also, another thought was a possible new Lake Mohawk Historic District, and one of the last notes I had was defer to the master plan for that review process for the land use element and land use zoning mapping concerns at hand. But I think the board should, if there's any other concerns they'd like addressed.
Birgit was
So
already.
Birgit was in the middle of.
Okay.
Newburgh.
So as I was saying, when I think of a bed and breakfast, I think of Newhart. I think of someone who owns property in Sparta and is a resident of Sparta and is a taxpayer in Sparta and operates a bed and breakfast with a certain number of rooms for guests. And the way that this ordinance reads, it's not that. It's extremely vague. There's also nothing about the permit for a bed and breakfast, how long the permit would be effective for, or there's nothing about the permit automatically being voided if the property upon which the bed and breakfast was sold or transferred. So that sounds more like a hotel or motel where, oh, I own this now. This is my right. And if the property sells, they're selling the business, which is not really what a protection would be. It could get out of hand. There's nothing about notification being given to the people who live within a certain distance of a proposed B&B. So the people who live right next door are not, according to the ordinance, they are not required to get notice that someone has applied for a conditional use permit for a bed and breakfast. There's nothing about as simple as the dining room, which, is part of a bed and breakfast, that you get breakfast as part of your lodging rate. There's nothing about requiring a dining room that can actually accommodate the number of guests that there are rooms for. There's nothing about fire safety codes or inspection of the property by the fire marshal. There's nothing about how many consecutive nights a guest can stay in a single visit, which could, be abused in its current iteration and turn into a more like short-term rental situation. There's nothing about the number of kitchens on the premises and whether or not, the kitchen can really only be used by the owners of the property or for the preparation of the breakfasts for the guests. There's nothing prohibiting food from being served in the guest rooms, which would be more of a hotel or a a motel service. There's nothing about where guest rooms and guest bathrooms can be permitted. Like, right now, there's nothing about preventing them from being in the basement or in a garage, a renovated garage. There's nothing about minimum square footage of the guest room. There's nothing about the owner and proprietor of the bed and breakfast maintaining guest registration records or for how long. There's nothing about the bed tax. So, the town council would theoretically be involved in setting the price for the permit for a bed and breakfast, but also, what is the bed tax? There's nothing limiting how close a bed and breakfast can be to recreational facilities, to schools, to churches. There's nothing about commercial general liability insurance or minimum limits. Speaking to, what's already been talked about here tonight, the liability that would come with having a bed and breakfast. There's nothing in the ordinance about requiring proof that the owner actually has legal title to the property and has the right by title to even apply for a permit. There's nothing about having a valid food handling certificate and sanitation from the health department to be able to provide guests with meals that have been prepared in a sanitary way. And there's also nothing requiring the proprietor to work with the Sparta Police Department in the event that there are problems with the guests. So I also before they were banned by ordinance, I too lived right next door to a Airbnb. Lake Mohawk, as far as I'm aware, has always had a 90-day minimum rental requirement, and that fell by the wayside. It was not enforced, and it was extremely problematic, and I would not wish that on anyone to go through the kinds of things that can sometimes come with having lodging, transient lodging. So I just wanted to say that I think that the ordinance is too vague, and if part of our purpose is to make sure that Lake Mohawk has the protections necessary, then I think that these things ought to be taken into consideration. Thank you.
Okay, I just want to address the consistency. I think a lot of good thoughts up here tonight, and I agree with everything that's being said. Just to add a little bit more to the consistent versus non-consistent, my concern is, when I look at the master plan amendments and the master plan itself, and I'll start with the uses. When you look at the 1997 master plan amendment, there are specific uses that are called out in that amendment, and they're in the C1 zone. It's basically taken verbatim from there. So what this ordinance does, it's starting to change those. So, and they may be the right answer, some of them, but they may not be. I'm not going to say, but what I will say is the minute you start changing, if it was like just one, I'd say, yeah, mate, I got it. But we talked about, we're taking out theaters, hotels, motels, a whole bunch of things. That makes it inconsistent with the master plan, with that amendment. So that's point one. So from a use perspective, it's inconsistent with the master plan for this particular zone. And then I want to talk to the land use element. The 1997 land use element took the C1 zone and moved it into the TCC zone. So if you want to be consistent with the master plan, you've got to leave it in the TCC. You almost need to do a master plan amendment first and then do the ordinance, so the ordinance is consistent. And there's ways around that if that's not what the council wants to do. But if you're not going to do that amendment, this is driving inconsistency. I think we've talked about the design standards. I think we all agree. The master plan says you want to protect those design standards. You want to drive. I think Lindsay and Catherine's report both recognize there's not enough there. So it's inconsistent with that goal. I want to talk about the bed and breakfast. So when you look at the ordinance, it adds certain conditions for the bed and breakfast. It makes it better. But it doesn't make it better everywhere. Bed and breakfast, it's in Lower Main Street, commercial zone, Main Street business zone, and the R4 residential professional zones. But they're permitted uses there. So all these extra conditions that go with what's going on in TC don't flow down to those zones. It's just a bed and breakfast. Doesn't talk about the minimum rooms, doesn't talk about the occupancy fee. Now, I don't know if that was an oversight or if that was the intention. It would have been nice to have somebody here to answer those questions. But, for those reasons, I think there's a major inconsistency with what this ordinance does and what the master plan has in it.
Ernie, thoughts, questions? No? Down to Chris? Oh, all right.
All right. So back to me. So I want to just speak to, I think that Birgit brought up a lot of great points, as did Ron, as did Brian as well, Jeanette. I mean, I think everyone's bringing up really great points. There's a couple that I have questions on. And again, I don't know who this is going to go to or where it's going or whatever. When it comes to the zoning standards, when you are in the commercial one historic zone, and you're talking specifically now about the bed and breakfast, right? So now we're on that. It says single-family detached dwelling. So what exactly, you're taking the definition of a single-family detached dwelling, and you're plunking that in underneath the requirement for what a bed and breakfast would be. So my question is, what standards apply there? The residential standards, the commercial standards, what's the setback? What is the parking? Are there minimums when these things happen? Is it just like, okay, I built a house there, now I need to have parking? Or is it more formal because of the zone? So that's one question. Should we just go one at a time and then answer? Probably. I have a
Lindsay,
few,
the best.
sorry. And I know you did not, I want to say loud and proud on this. I know you did not build this ordinance, so thank you for being patient and trying to answer our questions.
Yeah, not a problem. So some of the pieces of the conditions, some of the conditions do address things like parking. So there are parking requirements specifically for the bed and breakfast.
But they're strange because some of it says on street and then others say rear parking, 6 spaces rear, but there's 3 spots, something like.
No, it's off-street, minimum number of off-street. So it's the minimum, 2 off-street parking spaces for the owner of the dwelling and/or his agent. Plus 1 additional space for each room approved for use for guests.
You
Off-street
can have
parking spaces-
16, right, but you can have 16 adult guests according to what this says.
Yes.
So that would be, I mean, you could have 16 cars. Not that
If
you
that's
would,
how
but
many-
you could.
If that's what the occupancy load is on the drawings that are presented at a planning board application, yes.
Right, okay. So are there specific the setbacks and all that kind of stuff? Is that specific to the detached residential structure, or is that, where's that go to?
So all of this has, refers back to the C1 zone for bulk requirements. So it would refer back to what the requirements are within the bulk standards for that zone.
Okay. Safety and supervision. Birgit, you were touching on this. I think some other people touched on this as well. Safety and supervision. So you have, this says, if I understand it correctly, up to 16, 8 bedrooms, up to 16. But then you can also, there's an inconsistency in the ordinance in that it says you can have 2 adults and up to 2 children with them in a room. But then if you look at the way it's written in the ordinance, it's inconsistent with what it says. So it says maximum, but you could actually have 32 people in that, because if you had 8 rooms, so it says maximum of 60, it's just the way it's written is inconsistent. It doesn't match up. It needs to be, and I know you didn't do it, but I'm not I'm looking at you, but I'm talking to them.
looking at me when they're.
If that makes sense. I don't even know if that makes sense. I don't even know who I'm talking to at this point, but it's an inconsistency that should be addressed.
I think yes, because if it's not addressed, right, the strict interpretation is you can have 16 individuals inclusive of children. So say somebody was to come with 2 adults and their 4 kids, right, and they're staying in the
Kids, yeah. 4 people in a room.
or yeah. So but then they would have to restrict the rooms to have any additional people beyond the 16, which goes back to in my memo. There are pieces of the conditions that are difficult to enforce. So when looking at ordinances, you also have to think about, like Carrie and Raisha, when an application comes to hand or when somebody calls, how can you enforce certain things as well? Or how can you as a board, an application come here, and how can you interpret things like, I mean, I think some of the things are very vague, so it's difficult to enforce or difficult to say this is a variance or this is not, because it just says follow the appearance of the structure, the intensity of use and the appearance of the structure shall be consistent with the neighborhood in which it is located. So that's the bit subjective, right?
Right. But that's,
So-
that's where it needs to be, I think, to your point, made consistent, with the things that you're talking about. I want to go back to safety and supervision, because I think, you know, a lot of people have spoken about different things with Airbnb. You have a close proximity, 8 rooms, 8 different rooms that can be rented out Monday to Thursday, Tuesday to Friday, Wednesday to Sunday, or so you could have 8 total groups of strangers in one space, sharing bathrooms, sharing common areas, sharing whatever. But yet there's no requirement that I read anyway in here that says somebody's got to be there. So there's nothing in there that says someone needs, because the Bob Newhart example, they were always there because they lived there, but no one's living here. It says the person needs to be 5 miles away. That could be 10 minutes, that could be 20 minutes in traffic. And the thing is, if you have 8 different guests, you know what I mean? 8 different groups of guests, you know, they might not all get along. If something happens, what if someone gets hurt? These people don't know what's going on or what to do. They don't know. So I think when it comes to safety and supervision, something needs to be said, because otherwise this is like a collection of bed and breakfast rooms. It's like renting rooms. It's, and the other thing is,
You're not
how-
stopping a room from no one's there to say, hey, we're allowed 4, let's get 8 in here and throw a party. Because
Right.
there's no supervision.
well, that's the other, and the next question is, you know, so who's responsible? Who's going to be there? There was another ordinance that was provided to me from someone for review, and the interesting thing is, they have an entire, like, 5 sections of security, one of which is cameras must be installed outside. So you must be able to see outside. Is this thing going to be able to have, I mean, these are in the design standards, I guess, but is this thing going to have balconies? Like, are people going to be sitting on the balcony, yakking it up on it, because you have residents all over down there, you know what I mean? I mean, these are things that should be identified, I would think, somewhere. And the operational model, if the rooms are rented individually, how are they rented? Online? Do you go to like Airbnb? Do you go to a website? Do you say, hey, I'm coming on Tuesday to Thursday? If no one's there, you're not talking to anybody. So do you get a code to a door and you just show up and go to your room? I don't know. But to your point, when it comes to operations and security and things of that nature, I think maybe the master plan subcommittee or whoever's looking at these things should maybe look at some of these other ordinances and just for inspiration and make sure that these things are locked down, because you have to make sure that you're providing the safest environment, not just for the guests, but for also for everyone else who lives in the community. The other thing is the expansion risks. So there's a lot of properties that you identified on your map that are in this new zone. What are their exposures or risks that others of these bed and breakfasts could pop up in other of these properties? So could you get a rash of these things down there? Because there's no control. It doesn't say there's a maximum of 1 or there's a maximum of 2. And if you look at, can I borrow your map real quick? If you look at the map, there's a lot of stuff here. So how do you know it's only going to be limited to one? What's the protection?
But it's in a similar, just to play devil's advocate, there's no restriction on if every lot was to be a restaurant. Right? What the
Correct.
restriction is the ability to park the site, right? You rely on the zoning for the use to be successful there in a sense, or to be able to be located there because you have your bulk requirements, your parking requirements, and those coincide with the use, right? So if you have, I mean, how many times do we have uses come here that don't have enough parking? And we say, well, that's not gonna work because you can't park the site, you're not gonna have enough parking for people to use your site, to access your site, for people to work at your site. So those types of things, zoning is all kind of interplayed in that sense. So what I've seen in my experience, and I'm sorry for cutting you off, is sometimes there are distance requirements. I've written redevelopment plans where we have, things like hair salons, nail salons only can be X amount of feet from each other because you don't want to have your downtown where every other store is a nail salon, or a hair salon.
You know a little something, something about that.
Yeah, so there's things like that, but to your point, right, is at this time, the way this is written, if they're able to park it, they could put, realistically, and meet all those conditions, they could put a bed and breakfast at every, but just like they could do it with a retail store or a restaurant or.
That's what I'm saying. There's
or any
really
of
no
the permitted
protection. The
uses,
next thing
yeah.
you know, you have a whole little tourist hub down there because everybody that has apartments says I can make more money as an Airbnb. Okay, just don't want to belabor it. Just
not
want to
drive-through
confirm
restaurants, those are not-
there's no cap on it.
For our purposes, can we recommend that they just take this out of here? They should be looking at this as, if they're going to do an ordinance on bed and breakfast, it should be for the entire Sparta, not just for White Deer Plaza. And they can work that out, but keep it out of here because we're not doing it for everything else in here.
But they're changing the definition for it where it is everywhere else.
Right.
You know, the definition of what a bed and breakfast is different once this ordinance goes in place. But then the protections that you have in the down LMCC will not be in those other zones because they're not conditional uses.
So would that be considered
Right.
zoning?
Yeah.
No, 'cause it's
Not
a whole-
necessarily, because
yeah,
it's limited to the condition.
yeah.
But you are devaluing the properties up on 94,
This is the issue
where
that
they have a lot more
we've
room.
had come up all the time with different zones using different terms for the same thing.
Right.
And that's one of the things we talk about in the master plan, of getting away from that and having consistent terms and consistent, some places call it a gym, some places call it
Right.
a fitness center.
As the
some-
definition
but,
changes, yeah.
It just.
Ernie,
it
don't
makes
talk
it-
about Pilates studios.
No.
We've been here long
Yeah,
enough.
Pilates,
Do not talk
Ernie,
about
can you
Pilates.
talk
have
into the
to-
mic?
It makes deliberations here
Ernie, can you
longer.
talk into the mic, please?
Yeah,
Thanks.
that makes deliberations here longer. It costs money to the people that are coming here before us because it means more time for all their professionals and everything else. And, this is one of the, complaints we hear is that, things are slow but part of it is because of the way everything's written, it makes it really confusing, not only for the applicants, but also for us, and to put consistency in. I mean, that's, it's exactly what we're talking about here and what Ron's talking about is
Yeah.
we
I
gotta
think-
have consistency.
To that point, I think we see this now with the sign ordinance, right? So anyone that's been on the planning board or tried to put in an application or anything knows that if you try to look at what the sign ordinance is for a particular location, you will spend hours searching because it's buried. They're buried all over. There's like 2 or 3 different spaces where these design elements are for the signs. And I have.
I don't mean to be interruptive, but we can
No, I know.
talk about
No, but the
inconsistencies
point,
for the next
but
3
wait,
hours.
the reason I bring that up is as an example of what Ron is saying, or what Ernie's saying about this and what Joan said. This shouldn't be buried in an ordinance for a zone. This should be a standalone thing that applies to all the places where this thing is. Otherwise, no one's ever going to find it. Okay, here, Mike. Your turn.
Wow. Well, first off, Ken, thank you. Lindsay, thank you. I know the Lake Mohawk representatives left, and I appreciate the public's comments. I think open dialogue, it brought a lot of clarity, at least for me. It's complicated, right? Our task here tonight, we got to get back on task. I think everybody's comments were very well appreciated. Everybody had a chance to talk. I think we just need to get back on task here and what our task is to, either agree or disagree if this is consistent with the master plan or not. So I'm just, an effort of time, Celeste, I'm finished. Your turn.
Yeah, thank you. Is it time that we perhaps have a vote on whether or not we feel it's consistent or not? And then Ken will add his
Finish going around.
suggestions. I'm not, yeah, I wouldn't forget you, Joan. And I just want to say thank you so much for coming, Lake Mohawk, because we were just saying as we came in, we want to know what you guys, what your situation is and what you want. And I'm still not clear what you would want in those properties down there. Yeah, so think about it and get back to us.
Mike?
From what I picked up tonight, it doesn't seem like Lake Mohawk wants a bed and breakfast, hotel, or any rendering of that type of business in their zone. I think a closer look needs to be taken at this TCC Zone Town Center Commercial where they're located and maybe make an amendment to that zone for the Lake Mohawk historical area. And these types of businesses could be admitted. That's it.
Okay. I just wanted to pick up on something Jenny brought up before, and then Ernie just echoed about, some of the terminology and the confusion and stuff. And that's going back to section 4, where it has institutional uses in nonprofit clubs, lodges, fraternal organizations. That's what it currently says. And I think if we just left the period there, because that takes care of Lake Mohawk. It is a nonprofit club. It's a 501c4 nonprofit club, and it's a homeowners association. When you start adding the rest of this and private recreational and residential homeowner associations with the 300 members, I don't know, but a recreational association, that actually is a 501c7 incorporation, which is for private social and recreational clubs like country clubs, hobby clubs, like it would be a yacht club or any of that for pleasure and recreation. And they're not really zoned or they're not incorporated as that. So it's two separate uses. And I would like to make the recommendation that that part of the sentence regarding recreation association be removed. You can leave it as homeowner association because we do have a definition in our ordinances for homeowner association, but there is no definition for recreation association, and it's just going to muck it up again. And we don't know what the intentions are or the uses, so I would like to add that to your list. I also have a little bit of concern where it goes to, on section 5, with the required conditions, because we haven't done any of the design stuff. They're throwing it into everything that is the C1 zone, but the C1 zone for design standards is different than the Lake Mohawk and historical type of standards. And I think that's a big mistake. I think, they're better off using the existing C1H standards at this point until they're updated. And there are some problems with that, like with internally lit signs and boxes where they say it's discouraged, but in the TCC zone, it's prohibited. But the C1, I think, is something that I would recommend that they relook.
You got it? I'm just going to top it off really quick by saying thank you to absolutely everyone here. Thank you to people in the audience. Thank you to everybody who's spoken, who's provided insight, input into this situation. I know it's difficult at best, And I appreciate everybody's opinions, and I appreciate, you know, the effort that, that's been put out there. I also want to throw out there that we don't know, as a planning board, who in particular authored this ordinance.
Nobody here.
Well, not because there's no representative, but because it has not been indicated as to who authored this ordinance in particular. Because the individual who would be the attorney is the attorney for the municipality as well as Lake Mohawk Country Club. So there's been no indication to us as to who the actual author of this ordinance is. So unfortunately, I wouldn't even know where to direct those questions, right?
Ken, can you bring clarification to that?
To be candid with you, I'm not sure who drafted it. Where it was referred to as, I don't know who drafted it. I just know it was referred to us, so
I know the original request was from town council and Lake Mohawk to sit down and discuss the ordinance. And at that point, I don't know if it was, you know, the council representatives, the liaisons or not, but
I just don't know. I'm sorry.
where it came from.
Right.
I think it may have been presented from Lake Mohawk to.
It was, so after the introduction, right, so after the introduction, how it gets to us is that the clerk's office sends it to the zoning office, and the zoning office distributes it to our individuals. So we don't, I mean, historically, we haven't had this issue because the township has had the same planner for the municipality and the planning board. So historically, when there's been a situation like this, they've gone to the same person. But that hasn't been the case here. So, you know, asking Lindsay to do the consistency review and not knowing if there was even a planner involved in the authoring of this document, because from what I understand, Catherine Sarmat is only contracted with the town for fair share, but I don't know what the logistics are on that. But one way or another, I just kind of want to get it out there that we didn't have not only no representation, but no indication of who actually authored it. So all of our questions in terms of you know, the body of the document, we had no outlet for those. So, so again, I want to thank our professionals for stepping up and stepping in, and trying to clarify as much as humanly possible, you know, with their suppositions and what would be typical in these types of situations. And I think on that note, we are ready for a motion.
Yes, gang, I think it's pretty clear from your discussion that the proposed ordinance 26-07 is inconsistent with the existing Sparta Master Plan that is based upon the statements of the board at tonight's June 3rd, 2026 regular meeting, as well as the comments from the public. And we have a written planner's report from Negley, Lindsay Knight as the same. Summarizing some of the main points, but not limited to. Again, the record is pretty clear. The discussion, number one, concern was as to the current Route 94 C1H uses. Such uses as a result of the ordinance could be impacted substantially, more particular if those existing bed and breakfasts, church and the like should remain or be subject to this ordinance. Number two, as to the specific language and the primary purpose of the ordinance on the bed and breakfast, on its face, is too vague, insufficient design standards, lack of historic district protections, lack of landscaping, signage, and traffic impact standards. And as pointed out also by Joan, if it was to pass, the particular language in Section 4B5 dealing with recreation homeowners and the like is inconsistent, and also inconsistencies dealing with the other zones you have, TCC, C1H, and the like is set forth on the record. Another point was brought up, a possible new Lake Mohawk Historic District may be more favorable than the ordinance. Also, there was a discussion of a possible new separate and distinct bed and breakfast ordinance that could be town-wide and have some very detailed and specific standards and the like. And the last thing I have, point was deference of these ordinance topics to the master plan committee, which is reviewing that process now to address the land use element and land use zoning mapping issues as we discussed. Those are my primary points that I could memorialize to be given to the clerk for the mayor and council review.
Nice job. Yeah. I would make the motion to support that.
We have a second.
I'll second.
I'll second.
You're getting ready
We
to.
we have 3 seconds.
Pick one.
All right, you got Joan, you picked, who's the second?
So I believe, was it Jeanette? Was it Birgit? I don't remember. Birgit. Birgit will be the second.
Wait, for voting though, maybe it should be Chris.
I'm sorry, for,
Birgit, are you an alternate?
Birgit is an alternate. Actually, then Jeanette would be the second.
Okay.
No, Christine Dunbar seconded it.
So did Jeanette. She said it at
couldn't
the
hear
same
her.
time that Birgit said it, so that's why there was a,
Yahtzee.
We all wanted.
For it.
okay, so the motion as spoken by Ken, we have a motion from Joan and a second from Jeanette, and we need a roll call, please.
Question first, is this considered administration where they can vote as opposed to an application?
That's a good question.
I think everyone should just vote. It's an advisory, the record have everybody vote. Everybody is here, just vote.
So I just have one question on the vote, just so I'm
Birgit
clear.
second.
So a yes vote says, yes, we agree it's inconsistent?
Correct.
Yes, a yes vote is you agree it's inconsistent as set forth by my parameters.
We're voting for your motion.
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Roll call, please.
Christine Quinn?
Me?
Yes.
Well, yes is no.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes means it is
Yes.
inconsistent.
Sorry.
Mike Wallace?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Mike Sylvester?
Yes.
Ron Day?
Yes.
Christine Dunbar?
Yes.
Joan Furman?
Yes.
Ernie Rackstadt?
Yes.
Vice Chairwoman Jeanette Burt?
Yes.
Chairwoman Celeste Luciano?
Yes.
Brian Zimmerman?
Yes.
Birgit Bogler?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, that was unanimous. All right, thank you, everybody. So we're going to move very quickly into resolutions because we're going to put this on Ken's shoulders. I told you we would argue
Yes,
about it later.
yes, I apologize. I just need 2 more weeks. It was a very good and busy month, so it'll be on your next agenda. Thank you.
Okay, we are going to run through approval of minutes, so actually, Ken, I'm also going to put this on your shoulders. It was my understanding that the April 27, 2026 minutes were going to be held in perpetuity because that was a special meeting that turned into noticed for an executive session. So there was going to be no approval of minutes until such time as those matters were concluded.
That is correct. Under the closed session, we do keep minutes, and we do keep that, but until the litigation, and that being the fair housing, is resolved, those minutes are kept privileged. Yes.
Okay, so that brings us to the May 6, 2026 minutes. Any questions or comments from the board regarding these minutes?
I have corrections on page 4. And it's halfway down, under Environmental Commission. So the Environmental Commission, second line, would be applying to Sussex County for a $25,000 grant. For a $25,000 grant, not a $2,500.
Okay, so there needs to be a zero the comma is in the right place, but there needs to be a zero added at the end. That's a typo.
Yeah, for trail work. And Ms. Dunbar informed the board that the Environmental Commission has been closely following the data center discussions in surrounding towns and the impacts to protect the aquifer. And lastly, Ms. Dunbar stated that we're going to have to change that sentence because she did not state that we're applying for a program for bats.
Oh, my.
So we applied for a grant allowing us to educate residents regarding bats would be more appropriate. Thank you.
All right, it is
Don't
late.
worry,
We are getting
won't hold it
punchy.
against you about the bat program. We're fine.
Any other,
Batty.
any other changes or amendments?
Page 2. Fourth paragraph, where it starts, Mr. Dykstra outlined the requested variances for the board and members in detail. And it talks about the different silos, and it says, for the first one, silo 2, height variance of 45.11 feet, where 45 feet is required. And then it says required further down as well. It's not required, that is the maximum. So 45 feet is, the maximum height, not the required height.
Good point.
And same thing, I guess, with setbacks.
That was the issue, point 1. All right.
Okay, any
I
other?
just have one thing. At the end of minor site plan, I had requested an executive session just to discuss a certain minor site plan applicant. If that could be memorialized, please. I know that we're not going to get to it tonight. But that's fine.
The other thing we're not going to get to tonight, I was waiting to other business, but on page, I think there are 2 page 4s or 3s, but where it talks about minor site plan subcommittee, we had asked for Mr. Porro to invite the town manager to our next planning board meeting. I don't know if that happened, but he's not here. So our motion to adopt the minutes was contingent upon that. So the minutes at this point are not adopted, and I'd like to ask that you extend the invitation for the next meeting with adequate time notice, please.
I can do that.
Thank you.
And also your request for the executive session.
Yeah. with-
Right.
Well, administratively, why would one thing disqualify the balance of the meeting minutes?
It should just be taken out, right? And then everything else could be
And we
approved.
approve the minutes, but for that.
Well, I think we can approve the minutes that it was discussed, and that, now, tonight's meeting will say that that topic is continued and will be carried to the next meeting.
Okay.
So I'm
Only
okay
because
with it in the
was
minutes.
inserted there, and the minor site plan subcommittee did not put that in there. So it's
Say
not
that again?
something, the minor site plan committee did not put that language in there. It was inserted in there. So we want an explanation of why it was inserted in there. We had something different.
Right, so, but Joan, the minutes can be approved, but you're saying, Ms. Furman
Okay.
stated that there was an application that was submitted to minor site plan subcommittee in 2020 and was denied twice before the subcommittee. She stated the application ultimately approved by the township manager and town attorney, requested Mr. Porter to invite them for a better understanding. I think that's fine the way it's stated.
Yeah, that's fine, but when I actually made the motion, it was with the condition that the town manager come. That was part of the motion that we both,
Oh, you're saying when you approve the minutes?
Yeah.
To the back. I think it's so clarified, and I think, so you have Ms. Furman motion to adopt the 25 motion subject the minutes with the condition that you request planning board meeting to discuss unilateral return.
right, so
I
if he
think it's
wasn't
in there.
requested, I want to follow up on that and have that done.
I think
We'll
I'm okay.
carry that forward,
Yeah,
right?
we'll-
Yes.
All right, I'm okay with that clarification on the record.
Right, especially since that motion carried.
Yes.
That was, yeah. Okay, so,
Approve the minutes with those clarifications.
okay, so a motion and a second to approve minutes with clarifications as indicated.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Oh, roll call?
Christine, oh wait, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Birgit Bogler,
Yes.
Jeanette Burke,
Yes.
Christine Dunbar,
Yes.
Ron Day,
Yes.
Joan Furman,
Yes?
Chairwoman Celeste Luciano,
Yes.
and Christine Quinn,
Yes.
Ernie Rackstead,
Yes.
and Brian Zimmerman.
Yes.
Okay, and we're going to be as brief as we possibly can for updates. Nothing on town council? Okay.
Nothing to report.
Environmental Commission?
I'm good.
Okay. Subcommittees, we went through minor site plan subcommittee here. That would have been the only update. And master plan subcommittee, our next meeting is on this coming Monday on June 8th. There was a smaller meeting of some of the members to go over the objectives as they relate to goals that have been discussed by the larger group. And we are going to discuss those at our next meeting. Looking forward to moving this forward. And so that is it on updates. Other board business, I think, Joan, you touched on what you wanted to touch on with regard to.
It's getting late, yeah, but I think maybe we can save it next time, but
Okay.
I think we need to establish procedures, protocols of how this board operates and well, we'll discuss how we give notice that others follow those rules.
And then we are going to let Ken expand on executive session.
Yeah, we're going to carry that, I think, to our next meeting, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. And we are going to open it to the public for the last section. Jenny? You have no questions? Beth?
Thank you.
Oh, my. All righty then, seeing none, that brings us to Ernie, you're on adjournment.
All right. Motion to adjourn.
All right.
All in favor? Aye. And we ended before 10.
There you go.
Yeah, I know. Remember the days?